Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the origins of religion, a topic that you guys know is near and dear and passionate to my heart. so, merely state facts. And I'm hoping, that these facts that I'm stating are going to help awaken some people and make them want to ask more questions. That's the purpose of this whole thing. I want people that have been born into a system that is designed to mentally enslave them to start to look for the keys to the doggone cell because they can let themselves out. And what's happened is when you're born into a religion, you kind of get this um I get this concept or this ideal that this is what you have to do. And if you don't do it, you're going to be letting down family members, you're going to be letting down loved ones and so forth. And you're not going to be able to be a part of anything. It's actually all false. You can still be a part of things. You can still, create a new reality for your loved ones. You can still be a part of things. It's just that what's happened is when you're born, you're given that name, that race, and that religion, and then you spend the rest of your life really, defending a false identity. And so we have to start to dispel some of these crazy concepts because if we don't dispel these falsehoods, we're going to persist generation after generation after generation after generation with this mental enslavement with no real truth, no real information backed by actual historical fact that has been left behind by our own ancestors. This is not like stuff that I make up. And I think that's the difference between me and a lot of other people. I'm always giving you guys the information and I'm telling you where it comes from so that you can become your own researcher. You can discern the information for yourself and you can make your own decision what you believe. That's what it's all about. We're going to break down some of the very beginning structures of religion and, pretty much how it got started. All right. So we're going to get right into it, guys. The origins of religion. All right. You got your tea? What you're looking at here is a Melanesian cargo cult. Cargo cults are known literally all over the planet. And the largest cargo cult is Christianity. That is the largest cargo cult. Okay. This cargo cult has its roots going back all the way into the time of the testing of bombs and in the wars when the U.S. military will go to these islands and in these other foreign countries, and they would test weapons. They would test nukes, believe it or not. Bikini Atoll, they blew up the damn island. They moved the people off their own island and blew up the damn island. I mean, there's so much stuff we do that's crazy. But in the midst of this, in the midst of these islanders had never seen anyone before other than themselves, really. They started to see airplanes, weaponry, military soldiers walking with guns and rifles. They started to see, the USA, across the chest of the uniforms that the military wore. And also the military would give them cans of corned beef hash, bottles of water, MREs, and those kind of things. And so it was like the gods, in their eyes, the gods were blessing the tribe and bringing them these gifts for them being good people and so forth and so on, which led rise to prophets and everything else, right? You can see here that this tribe is still walking around with USA tattooed on their chest or painted on their chest, really, with these artificial guns that are just sticks that have, bayonets on the edges like they used to see when the military came there many decades ago. Okay. So what happens when an advanced civilization meets a less advanced civilization, the lesser advanced civilization, it looks like this civilization is magical. They don't understand technology. And what do? We deify them instantaneously. They're deified. That's it. They're gods. They have to be gods. There's nothing else. There's no other thing it could be. These are gods because we don't understand their technology. Let's look at cargo cult. Let's look at the term itself. The reason why I'm reading this and I add this stuff in is so that you guys don't say, "Oh man, he's just making this stuff up." No, no. This is from the Anthropology Encyclopedia. Cargo cult. The term appeared in 1945 at the end of the Pacific War. Anthropologists rapidly embraced the neologism to label Melanesian social movements that had come to their attention during the colonial era, which began in the region in the second half of the 19th century, as well as post war movements that captured ethnographic attention. A Southwest Pacific example of Messianic or millenarian movements was once common throughout the colonial world, and the modal cargo cult was an agitation or organized social movement of Melanesian villagers in pursuit of cargo by means of renewed or invented ritual action that they hoped would induce ancestral spirits or other powerful beings to provide. In other words, what they're saying here is once these military soldiers started coming to the island with this cargo, in other words, these cans of these MREs and these cans of corned beef hash and bottles of water and soda and all this other kind of stuff and clothing and things. That's what they called cargo. And they thought that by calling on the ancestors, they can make these gods return and bring them more blessings. Okay. Sound familiar? Does it sound familiar to you? Typically, an inspired prophet with messages from those spirits sound familiar. Sounds like a preacher, right? Here goes the preacher man getting ready to do his thing. Inspired prophet with messages from those spirits persuaded a community that social harmony and engagement in improvised ritual, dancing, marching, and flag raising, or revived cultural traditions would, for its believers, bring them cargo. Okay? So what they're saying is this guy would then become the leader of the cult. He would become like the prophet, right? He's the pastor, the preacher, whatever you want to call it. And he is leading the dancing, the ritualistic dancing, the marching, raising of flags, and so forth and so on, basically in honor of these gods, so that they would bring back more cargo to bless the tribe. Okay, that was the whole thing behind this. This has happened so many times around this planet, you can't even count. I mean, I'm talking going even all the way back to Rome, when Rome encountered back in the Roman era, when they were a super kingdom on the planet. And their technology to us right now would be damn near Stone Age, but to the people of the era, they were super high tech. So even when they encountered people with their level of technology, they looked like gods. It's the same thing that happened when Christopher Columbus accidentally got lost and kind of stumbled across those islands and got saved by Native Americans, indigenous people. I don't want to use Native Americans, by indigenous tribes, and then decided, the tribes automatically assumed, based on a prophecy, that these were gods, returning, basically. And they praised these people and brought them on to the island and everything else, and they ended up getting raped and killed, right? It's the same thing that happens all over the planet. It not only happens all over the planet, I think it happens throughout maybe even the entire universe. That's my personal opinion. That's something I'm just adding in. I believe if we ourselves went to another planet and we came across people that were in the Stone Age, they would worship us almost instantly. That's just my opinion based on what I've seen researching these cargo cults. Okay. So this is pretty interesting stuff. Look at these photos right here. You see these boys? They're already being trained now. They're being indoctrinated with the ideology of this belief system from birth. So now they're walking around with painted chests that say USA on them. They've got these artificial guns with bayonets at the tip, right? They're marching through the streets as if they're soldiers in honor of their god, so that they can bring back more cargo. Again, like I said, the way religion starts is a more advanced civilization interacts with a lesser advanced civilization. The lesser advanced civilization deifies them, and then when the next generation comes, they're indoctrinated. They're indoctrinated into this system, and personal inflections are added to the myth. lies, fabrications, things that can put people in positions of power over other people are added in as well. And then gradually, little by little, you have this self-made prison being built where the people that are in the religion are the prisoners and they're also the prison guards at the same time, which is pretty interesting. You can see down here in the lower left corner that these people actually even replicated one of the planes that they saw the military landing in with the propeller and everything. You can see this flag that they made, right? They're very, very astute people. I mean, these are intelligent people. But again, the thing that eluded them was technology. They didn't understand it. And so because they didn't understand it, it became deified. And because they're very artistic, they were able to replicate all of this in this fashion. And this is one of many cargo cults that existed around the planet. Look at this. Check this out. Look at these planes. These are an on. Look at this satellite dish. Look at the intricate level that they went to build this communications device that's really just made of straw and tree limbs and grass probably or whatever. Look at the intricate design here to work. Look how hard they worked to build this thing. And so what they would do is they would go out and pray underneath these objects that they built and look up at the sky for hours, hoping for the gods to return. Anthropology or cultivated a number of important keywords, including culture, ethnicity, worldview, socialization, ethnography, and the rite of passage. Among these terms is cargo cult, which, although more particular in scope, has enjoyed surprising popularity both inside the discipline and beyond. Peter Worsley, who compiled an early overview of cargo cults in The Trumpet Shall Sound, which is a book, offered what had already become the standard definition of cargo cults: strange religious movements in the South Pacific. During the last few decades, in these movements, a prophet announces the imminence of the end of the world in a cataclysm which will destroy everything. Now, this is coming up. This is what this author, Peter Worsley, had observed. Okay, listen to this. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Tell me if this story sounds similar. These are people who never heard of the Bible. Strange religious movements in the South Pacific appeared during the last few decades. In these movements, a prophet announces the imminence of the end of the world in a cataclysm which will destroy everything. Then the ancestors will return. Does this sound familiar to you guys? I'm just asking. Does this sound familiar? People who never heard of Jesus and the Bible and none of this stuff. Then the ancestors will return, or God, or some other liberating power will appear, bringing all the goods the people desire and ushering in a reign of eternal bliss. Won't he do it? Hallelujah. You see? This was written in the 1950s, this book. This is an observation by an anthropologist who traveled to all these cults and realized they were all doing the same exact thing. The same exact thing that all religions are doing today around the entire world, pretty much. They are all going through the same exact process that I just described to you. A prophet announces that there's it's the end times. There's a cataclysm coming, right? To destroy the world. In Christianity, it's going to be destroyed by fire this time. The first time it was destroyed by water. Now it's going to be destroyed by fire. But then there's a second coming. There's a return of the God that's going to come and liberate everyone who believes in him and who worships him properly. And you're going to get the eternal bliss. You're going to get eternal life. It's the same story. It's the same story. What's different? It's just the different advanced civilizations that meet up with the lesser advanced civilizations. That's what it is. And that's how you became your ancestors or your parents or your brothers and your sisters and your cousins and all those people. That's how they became religious. Let's check out this video, this 2-minute video. Hey guys, you see what I'm talking about? If you look into the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, you discover again a situation where human beings deify people that came here from somewhere else. So we know that Thoth, according to his records, that he's not from Earth, just like a lot of these other people that worship these particular gods in different religions, which we're going to look at tonight as well. They all claim to not be from Earth. And what's interesting is when these gods with a lowercase g, when they leave, they become deified. Let's look at the just a few paragraphs here in the preface of the Emerald Tablets. The history of the Emerald Tablets in the following pages is strange and beyond belief of modern scientists. Their antiquity is stupendous, dating back some 36,000 years BC. The writer is Thoth, an Atlantean priest king who founded a colony in the ancient Egypt after the sinking of the mother country. He was the builder of the Great Pyramid of Giza, erroneously attributed to Cheops. In it, he incorporated his knowledge of the ancient wisdom and also securely secreted records and instruments of ancient Atlantis. For some 16,000 years, he ruled the ancient race of Egypt from approximately 52,000 BC to 36,000 BC. At that time, the ancient barbarous race among which he and his followers had settled had been raised to a high degree of civilization. So they visited some people a very long time ago and raised them up to a high level of civilization in the land of Kim. Thoth was an immortal in that he had conquered death, passing only when he willed, and even then not through death. His vast wisdom made him ruler over the various Atlantean colonies, including the ones in South and Central America. We know that for a fact because over there he was known as Quetzalcoatl, Lord Pakal, Kukulkan, and many other names. Lord, Viracocha. When the time came for him to leave Egypt, he erected the Great Pyramid over the entrance to the Great Halls of Amenti, placed in it his records, and appointed guards for his secrets among the highest of his people. In later times, the descendants of these guards became the pyramid priests, by which Thoth was deified as a god of wisdom. What's interesting in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he never claims to be God. Thoth never says, I'm God, or I'm a God, bend over and worship me. Get on your knees, man. Matter of fact, he lifts people up and says, no, I'm a son of Atlantis. And so he never says that he's a God. That's one of the things that I actually appreciated about this guy. And I do mean guy. He's not a God. Some of his relatives pretended to be gods. They masqueraded as gods because they found it was a lot easier to get the people to worship them, to do the work without them knowing that they were slaves, right? But Thoth was actually opposite of that. He did the work for the people, helped the people, instructed the people, taught the people, and lived amongst the people as a normal person, even though he was seen as an extremely wise man. Once he left the area, that any particular region, any one of the ones he kickstarted many civilizations around the planet. He became, after he didn't come back for a certain amount of time, he became known as a deified god. This is what we do in our culture as a human race. We start to deify these people that we don't understand because they seem smarter than us. They seem wiser than us. They seem like they have abilities that we don't have. We don't understand technology. We don't understand spiritual sciences. We're just starting to tap into, through quantum physics, understanding spirituality. We're just at the very beginning stages of this. And we're talking about people that are a million years ahead of us. How do I tie this into the modern day biblical information? Well, there's UFOs throughout the entire Bible. Again, more evidence of people running into situations where they're seeing advanced technology and they're trying to use the words that they actually know in their language at that time, in that era, to describe what they saw. In actuality, what they've been describing many times over and over again throughout the entire book is our technological devices, and people using, or sometimes people inside of those devices flying around. So are there descriptions of UFOs described in the Bible? Yeah. Keep in mind, the Bible translators go far back as the 1600s. And basically what I did was I went through, and instead of doing every single one of these verses, okay, what I did was I said, let me just count the number of these particular items that appear to be technological. So there are 70 verses that are describing clouds as vehicles. There are 15 verses that describe pillars as vehicles, 10 that describe dwellings as vehicles flying in the sky, 160 verses that are lights and fire as vehicles. There are 17 verses that describe spinning wheels that can fly, 22 verses that describe dark and shining objects that fly. There are 37 verses of various objects in the Bible that are described as UFOs. And basically, they're like flying furnaces, burning bushes, eagles' wings, smoke, stars, and other objects. And also, don't forget the first fleet of the Elohim, okay, which is a plural name for gods, plural. Elohim is a plural term, and it's referencing the Elohim are from the Enuma Elish and the 7 tablets of creation. They're known in the Epic of Atrahasis as well as the Ijiji. That's the Elohim. They're the Ijiji. Okay, that's a whole nother thing to get into. So virtually all religions either worship aliens or believe in aliens, and they don't even know it. And so when I talk about this, people seem to get really offended right away. They don't realize that they're worshiping aliens. I mean, it's admitted by them that they're worshiping aliens. They don't even want to admit it. So let's have a look at the definition of alien, right? A resident born in or belonging to another country. Well, we know that. An entity from outer space. Okay, interesting. An entity from outer space. Now that the definition is clear, let's take some look at what the religions on the planet say and what their origins are. Christianity, 2.1 billion people worship Jesus. Okay, and John said unto them, you are from beneath, I am from above. You are of this world, I am not of this world. Not from earth. You're worshiping an alien. Islam, 1.3 billion people believe that the Prophet Muhammad was meditating in a cave of Hira by himself when the angel Gabriel, who's not from earth according to Gabriel, descended and came down from above to him and told him to recite the Iqra, the words of God. Even though the Prophet Muhammad was illiterate at the time, he actually had to go hire a doggone guy to scribe for him because he couldn't even write what this angel/alien was telling him that came from space down to the planet, to the planet's surface to talk to him. Hinduism, 851 million people believe in that. Hindus hold that the cosmos is populated by numerous deities and spiritual beings, gods and goddesses or devas, who actually influence the world and who interact with humans. They're not from Earth. They're not from Earth. Buddhism, 375 million people. Okay. The deities say certain branches of the larger Buddhist tradition, including the Mahayana, including a variety of gods and goddesses that are not from Earth. Mormons, 13.5 million. The angel Moroni, who's not from Earth, according to Angel Moroni, in Mormonism, is an angel that visited Joseph Smith on numerous occasions, beginning on September the 21st, 1823. According to Smith, the angel was the guardian of the golden plates, which the Latter-day Saints believe were the source of the material for the Book of Mormon, buried in a hill near Smith's home in western New York. This is just to name a few. Every single one of these religions believe that the people that they're worshiping and then honoring and everything else and praising and praying to are not from Earth. Their origin didn't start here. If I get into a spaceship and I fly to Mars and I meet somebody on Mars that lives on Mars, this is a hypothetical. I'm just making up a hypothetical for you. Then that Martian person is going to look at me and say, I just got visited by an alien from Earth. I'm an alien to Mars. I'm an alien to anywhere else that I go in the universe. Why? Because I'm not from that exact location. I'm from here. And so by that definition, all of these people that are religious are all worshiping and praying to aliens. I don't care if you feel it. I don't care if you believe they're physical or non-physical corporeal bodies, multidimensional. It doesn't matter. They're not from Earth. They're aliens. You're worshiping an alien. Period, point blank. All religions worship aliens or believe in aliens, and they don't even know it. Period, point blank. There's no way to escape it. There's no way to run and hide from it. You're worshiping an alien. That's what you're doing. So just embrace it. Embrace it if you're going to be involved in it, right? So, you have another more modern cargo cult, the Peculiar History of the Jehovah's Witnesses, right? That's a more modern cargo cult. We know how Christianity got started and how they went off, right? I mean, how did Christianity get spread around the world? Let's think about that for a minute. Christians will tell you that it was spread around the world by love and the gospel, the good news that's to be spread around the planet, right? That's not how Christianity got spread around the planet. Christianity got spread around the planet by raping, pillaging, killing, murdering, right? Stealing. That's how it got spread around the planet. During the papal inquisitions alone, which spanned over 700 years, where the popes themselves ordered the killing and the murder of anyone who would not align with the church. And so the inquisitions, they went literally continent hopping, and they killed over 50 million people over the course of 700 years under the order of the popes that ruled in those eras. The papal inquisitions, look it up. That's how Christianity got spread around the planet. How did it get over here to the Americas? Well, the Spaniards came over here and the Europeans came over here and beat and raped and killed and slaughtered. So what they would do is they would go to an indigenous tribe and they would take the chief or the chiefess or whatever, and they would bring them out in front of the whole group of people, the tribe, and they'd say, you're going to learn this, and if you don't want to learn this religion, then we're going to have to kill you. And so, of course, after some going back and forth and learning some of the basic understanding on communication, a lot of these tribesmen would be like, no, this isn't for us. We're going to maintain with our ancestral belief system, our spirituality. So what they would do is they would take that chief, that chiefess, and they would actually burn them at the stake in front of the whole tribe, hang them and torture them for days in front of the whole tribe. And so you're shown basically that if you don't fall in line, that could be you. And so once they do that, it's like breaking a horse, right? They take a horse, they put it in a gated area, and they literally work with that horse until they break it, until that horse can be ridden. It's the same exact thing they did with people around the planet. They went from continent to continent to continent to indigenous culture, one at a time, knocking them down, taking away their natural ancestral belief systems, and reinstalling this new Christianity belief system instead. Building churches there, torturing, killing, raping. It was a very bloody situation, and they used it to convert this planet into Christianity. It was very bloody, very, very, very murderous, very heartbreaking, really is what it was as well. And so after you break the first generation of people that you're there with, then the second generation is being now taught, listen, this is what we got to do. By the third generation, they're full swing. They're coming in, they're born in with that illusion, they're born with the lie. They're taught from birth. They're worshiping, they're honoring, they're bending over and on their knees and begging and praying and giving offerings and everything else. By the fourth generation, they don't even have to think anymore. It's just built into them. They're automatically doing it. You see? Jehovah's Witnesses, the same thing. The sect, now known as the Jehovah's Witnesses, was started by Charles Taze Russell, who was born in 1852. He was raised as a Congregationalist, but at the age of 17, he tried to convert an atheist to Christianity and ended up becoming converted instead, not to atheism, but to agnosticism. Some years later, he went to an Adventist meeting and was told that Jesus would be back at any time, and he got interested in the Bible. The leading light of Adventism had been William Miller, a flamboyant preacher who predicted that the world would end in 1843. Oops, another mistake there. When it didn't, he discovered his mathematical error, basically. He said, I screwed up, I made some bad calculations, so forth and so on. But a lot of people left it. But this guy, Charles Taze Russell, decided to move on and build his whole religion from scratch, which is the Jehovah's Witnesses. He started with the little magazines, the Watchtower magazines, and he built it from there, literally, okay? And this is a more modern religion. It's one of the newest ones that actually exist on the planet. The Bible itself that they read from is a completely converted and rewritten Bible. Words taken out, words changed around, paragraphs changed, Gnosticism added in some places taken out. I remember I was, let me go back to the screen here. I remember I was walking on the beach, okay? And that was where I go and do my 5 mile walks. And there was a group of, you know, Jehovah Witnesses out there, and they're screaming and carrying on and trying to stop people. I said, well, let me just stop. Let me just stop because I need to see how much do these people know about their own religion. And so I stopped, and the lady started talking to me, and she started telling me about Jehovah Witness and Jesus and all this other kind of stuff. And I said, okay, interesting. I said, I'll listen to you if you can answer some of my questions about your own religion. So she goes, oh yeah, sure. What do you want to know? I said, who is the person that founded this religion? She couldn't answer the question. She literally couldn't answer the question. I said, okay, well, that was Charles Taze Russell, who started with the Watchtowers. I started asking more questions. Like, what year was your Bible redesigned and basically written? Because it's not the original text. It's not the canonized Bible. She couldn't answer the question. I said, interesting. You don't know that either. Okay. I asked her, I asked this lady so many questions, she couldn't answer any of them. And I said, tell me about this 144,000 that you guys are always talking about that are going to go to paradise. They don't call it heaven, they call it paradise. And she says, well, only 144,000 are going to make it to paradise. And so I said, 144,000. Interesting. I said, well, how many people do you think there are on earth? She said, oh, about 3 or 4 million. I don't know. I said, 3 or 4 million? There's 3 or 4 million people in Florida where we are right now. There's 3 or 4 million people in this state. I said, do you realize that there's 310 million Americans? She goes, what? I said, yeah, there's 310 million people in America, and there's 7.8 billion people on Earth. Her eyes got big. I said, so if only 144,000 are going to make it, that's less than 0.1%. Why would you be telling this to anybody? Shouldn't you be keeping this a secret for yourself so you can be one of the ones that make it? Do you understand that you're spreading the information on what you believe? It's only 144,000 going to make it. Meanwhile, there's 7.8 billion people on the planet. So your odds are shrinking every time you talk about this. She went crazy. Oh my God, I can't. You can see her computer circuits burning up inside of her brain, and her brain's almost literally exploded, right? So again, a lot of this stuff is just, why is she doing this? Just, again, people are force fed this stuff from a young age, and then they take it as a belief system and they run away with it without ever researching any of it. I remember I was on the beach. Again, the same beach. I was sitting at the edge of the ocean. I had just got done doing my walk. Sometimes I sit at the edge of the ocean and do myself a little meditation. I'm sitting there with my eyes closed, and I'm just listening to the ocean, and that's my music, right? A guy and a woman walk over. I don't see them walk over because they walk up from behind me, but all of a sudden I hear the sand shifting by my body. I open my eye, turn to my left. There's a guy standing there. Right away, when he handed me a bottle of water, I said, oh, here comes another one. He was trying to convert me into Christianity, right? He hands me the bottle of water. I said, you know what? This time I'm going to take this damn water. I'm going to have a conversation with these people. And the guy goes, have you taken Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior? I said, no. Why would I do that? He goes, what do you mean? I said, I am God. You're God? What are you talking about? I said, yeah, I'm God, and God is me. The same divine spark that created everything in the entire universe is the same divine spark that's inside of every atom inside of my body. And so by that method, I am God and God is me. And so are you. And so is this young lady as well. We're all the same. We're all part of that same one divine consciousness. That threw him off right away. Then because he's a program code, he couldn't even conceive of what I had just told him. He didn't even have an epiphany with that. He went right back into his pitch. And I said, okay, I'll listen to you if you can answer some questions. Can you answer some questions? And I said, when was the Bible written? And he goes, oh, it was written thousands of years ago. I said, oh man. I said, no, the Bible wasn't written thousands of years ago. I said, do you even know who wrote the Bible? Oh, yeah, Paul, Peter, John. I said, oh, my God. Listen, man. I said, you happen to stumble into one of the world's foremost experts on biblical texts, the Torah, the ancient tablets in the world. That's who you're talking to right now. Do you understand that the Bible was not written by any of the disciples? He got flabbergasted. I'm like, dude, listen to me. The disciples, if you were to do your studies, they were actually illiterate men. They couldn't read or write. There was nobody standing there transcribing every sentence that they've spoken either. How did the Bible come along, even including the Old Testament? You've heard me say this before. They copied the majority of that stuff from the Enuma Elish, the Atrahasis, the Mahabharata. You have some of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, right? You have in there, you have, like, for example, the 42 Laws of Mayat. You know, that's where you get the 10 Commandments that were extracted from that information. You have the Bhagavad Gita, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. You have the Sumerian tablets that are outside of the Enuma Elish. There's many tablets that exist. The Code of Hammurabi, the Epic of Gilgamesh. I mean, that can just keep going and going and going. And I said, then you have the Emerald Tablets, where Jesus's teachings are identical copies of Thoth's teachings from the ancient Kemetic mystery schools taught 50,000 years ago in the land of Kem, which is now known as Egypt. And I could see the steam coming out of this guy's ears. He couldn't even conceive what the heck I was telling him. And I said, do you know that the Bible was written thousands of years after the people were long gone, dead, buried, bones disintegrated, and everything else on the ground? He said, no, what are you talking about? I said, listen to me, man. The Bible was written from 100 AD to 900 AD. And who wrote the Bible? Those were followers of Thoth. These people didn't write a Bible, by the way. What they did was they started discovering in different caves and different little makeshift buildings that existed a long time ago, these vases with scriptures and cylinder scrolls and papyruses and tablets. And they started collecting them. And they started transcribing that information onto paper, parchment paper, and so forth. And so that text, that information over time would be studied by the Gnostics. Even in more time, much later, you have then the Coptic Christians, and then you also have the councils that were formed. Like, for one, is the Council of Nicaea, who then started analyzing a lot of these copied and recopied and recopied and recopied and recopied texts, and started analyzing which ones to keep and which ones to keep out. Which ones to keep? They were thinking, let's make this into an actual canonized book. We'll take this and put that in here. We'll take this one. No, that talks about aliens. We don't want the Book of Enoch in here because he's talking about aliens. Let's leave that one out. We don't want the Myth of Adapa in here because he's talking about aliens. We don't want that in here. That's the Book of Adam. We don't want that in here. So you have all these apocrypha texts that were kept out, right? And the Council of Nicaea coordinate and create this hodgepodge of a book based on hand-picked content, curated content that they wanted that would allow them to still maintain control over the people, over the masses of people. And that's how you get to the canonized book today that the majority of religious people read around the world, right? It's pretty crazy how in the 21st century, we're still running around believing in that stuff without doing any research about it, and still believing that there's a magic sky daddy with a magic wand in the sky waving it at you when you want somebody to win your basketball game and you want to win a war. Military soldiers actually pray to defeat their enemies in war. You think that there's a universal creator that can create universes, is going to come down into this dimension and grant you a magic wish that you would kill another person. And people actually believe this is true. They believe that this is like, yes, this sounds logical to me. The creator of planets and galaxies and universes would love to come down here and let me kill this guy. You see? You see how stupid? I'm saying it like this so you can see how dumb it sounds. So you can see how stupid it is. It's stupid. It's just outright dumb. And we keep teaching this to kids, and those kids keep teaching it to their kids and their kids. It's ridiculous. I got this house. The Lord, he do what he do, won't he do it? He gave me this mansion. Meanwhile, around the corner and down the street, there's a kid, a teenager that's homeless. It's homeless. That could be a much better person than I am. But won't he do it? He is good all the time when it refers to you and something that benefited you. But when things don't go your way, it's the other way. Oh, I let the Satan creep in. Christianity gives you the capability of blaming all the good things that happen on this magic guy with a wand, and I do mean a man. You guys keep calling him a man. Him, he, him. There is no such thing as a gender of a god. Doesn't exist. The universe is based off of yin and yang, light and dark. The universe is based off of good and evil. It's based off of that scale. And that means that the energy and the frequency that's creating everything we see in this realm, the divine energy itself, is also a frequency that has high frequencies and low frequencies built into it. It's a range. And so God is actually a frequency that you tune into. It's not a him or a he that everybody keep running around with. And I can't stand it when I hear women keep calling God a man. It's already bad enough that we've already subjugated you. You couldn't even walk into a church, first of all. That just happened recently. You can walk into a church. You would be stoned to death if you walked into a temple or a church back in the day. Okay? You just got a little bit of rights recently. You got to vote and things like that. That's not too long ago. And then right away, you're indoctrinated into still calling on God as a man, knowing that all life comes from a womb. You know that all life comes from a womb, right? But you're still calling this God a man. Doesn't exist. Not that way. The creator of a universe is not going to come down from outside of the actual universe, because whoever created this universe lives on the outside of it, not inside of it. The divine energy and the frequency is here, but the creator itself is not in here, or creators, potentially, whoever programmed this code. Inside of here, we are in here. We're fully immersed in it. We have the spark inside of us. We have a choice every single day to do good or do evil. It's up to us. There's no devil whispering in your ear to make you do anything bad. That's the bad thing about religion. It gives you a scapegoat. I can give you a good example. There was a pastor down here at a big mega church, a huge mega church, Calvary Christian Academy in what city is that in? That is in Pompano Beach, I believe, or Fort Lauderdale. Super mega church, right? This guy molests a little girl. The main pastor guy molests this little girl. Now, this little girl will most likely grow up completely traumatized. That's something you just don't get over. And potentially not even wanting to follow the route of Christianity because of what happened to her in the church. Now, let me see where the logic comes in. This pastor that committed this egregious act against this young girl who destroyed her entire life, all he has to do is say, "Oh, Jesus, forgive me for my sins," and he can go live in paradise for all eternity. But if this girl doesn't beg for Jesus's forgiveness and follow that path, she's going to burn in a lake of fire. Do you see how stupid that sounds? Do you see how dumb that actually sounds? It's dumb. And we got to stop teaching this garbage. At some point, man, for goodness sake, stop it, please. Recognize the foolishness. Recognize how dumb it makes you sound when you actually speak it out loud. Speak this stuff out loud and say it out loud so you can hear yourself. And you go, man, this is really dumb. How in the hell are we following this garbage? All of these generations? Then you have the black people that were already here in the Americas and some that were brought here as slaves. And then you put on a plantation that only has about 15, 20 slave owners. You know, the one slave owner and 15 or 20 workers, but there's hundreds of slaves. And there's only like one or two guns and a couple of whips. But how do they hook you in? They tell you this book. This book is your only way out. You have to die to live. You have to suffer and then die so that you can actually begin to live. Meanwhile, they're living now. They're in paradise. You're enslaving. They're making a killing off of you. You see the mental trick? Why are the majority of minorities religious? It goes all the way back to generations ago being beaten, raped into them, tricked into them, right? And then what happens? They literally pass that virus, and I call it a virus, onto their offspring. And then it continues. It's a consciousness virus that continues on through every generation. And it's passed down through epigenetic memories. And those epigenetic memories make you prone to want to actually do this. Now, another place before I sign off tonight that religion has a big place in why people do this, why these cargo cults form. Scientists and biologists in laboratories were researching the human genome, and they were wondering, why are human beings so prone to want to worship something? And so they started looking into it pretty heavily, and they started analyzing the different genes in the human genome. And they started to realize something. There was a gene that seemed like had to do with the urge for worship. So they said, let's test this one out. How they were doing this, they were putting these electrodes on people's heads, and they were having them have spiritual moments where they would be praying and so forth and so on, trying to analyze which part of the brain was doing this and how it triggered certain genes in the body. Well, they found the gene. It's called a worship gene. Now, what's interesting about this worship gene is they discovered that this worship gene is not that old. It was inserted into the Homo sapien genome around 200,000 years ago. Why is that important? According to the Sumerian tablets, about 200,000 years ago, that's when they decided to take out our chromosome number 2, fuse it together, and put telomere caps on each end, and get us to do the work for them in the fields as well, around that same 250,000 years ago range. The biologist said that this type of mutation couldn't just happen in 200,000 years. So it was purposefully done. Somehow they can't explain it. It should have taken millions of years for something like this to actually evolve in the human body naturally, but it didn't. It just appeared. That's because these people that tinkered with us, these Anunnaki people that tinkered with our genome, these advanced beings that are people, flesh and blood people like you and me, they literally took that chromosome number 2 out, fused it together, put telomere caps on it to shorten our lifespan, as well as inserted a worship gene or activated a worship gene in our body so that we will worship them as gods, do the work for them, bring them the offerings. What do you think the offerings were? If you analyze the Sumerian tablets, you find out what the offerings were. The offerings was their food. If you go to Egypt with me in 2022, we'll go to the temples where people would line up back in the day for miles to bring offerings to the demigods, to the pharaohs, and to the Anunnaki that were living and inhabiting some of these temples. And the purpose was they have these storehouses built inside the temples where they would take all these offerings and stack them up. Why? Because these people ain't going out there to kill no damn animals and grow no food. No, that's the offering. That's what the offerings were. The offerings were you bringing free food to these people. And in return, you'd get a blessing. Okay. My kid is sick. Can you bless us? Here's my best offering. And you bring them all this meat and all these fruits and vegetables, and they put it in the storehouse. The storehouses are still there to this very day. When you go to Egypt with me, we'll go straight to the storehouses and show you where the Anunnaki used to keep all the food from all the offerings. That's what the offerings were all about. Not paying 10% of your income so that the church can the pastor can drive a nice car and have a nice mortgage. It was because it started out originally as bringing us food, because we're not going to go hunting, man. We ain't got time for that. We're too busy dominating you guys. And so, you look back at the slave the slavery times, and you see these slaves, they got 20 people, 15, 20 people tops ruling over them on one plantation. They don't even say to themselves, you know what? This can't happen. We got to stop this now. Now, certain places there were some insurrections, but not enough places. Instead, that one book, reprogrammed them so good that even today, there are mega church preachers. I saw this one female mega church preacher. If you look it up on YouTube, you can find her. She's saying it's a good thing for slavery because if it wasn't for slavery, we would still be worshiping trees in Africa. You see how twisted the brain is? You see how sick that is? Somebody in my family went to their grandfather because they were showing their grandfather how the Palestinian kids in the field were getting picked off by Israeli soldiers, shot for fun. And that relative's grandfather told him they deserve it. Those kids deserve to get shot and killed like that. He's a Christian. The guy's a pastor, actually. And the reason why they deserve it is because they're worshiping the wrong God. Do you see how sick this is? This is why I'm doing this little talk, and I'm going to go into the next few weeks about this. I'm going to keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper, because the reason for the most killings and death on the planet to date is over two things: religious beliefs and political beliefs. That's it. Those are the two things that have destroyed the number of men on the planet. That's why there's 4 women to every man, 4 to 1. Why? The wars going all the way back. The wars primarily over religion. In more modern times, a combination of religion and politics. In certain parts of the world, it's religious, like in the Middle East. And in certain parts of the world, it's more political, like here in America. And then we take advantage of the people that are religious zealots in those other countries, and we use them to fight each other, and then we steal all their stuff. We snatch it all up. Right? That's what we did to the Taliban and these guys, right? We just trick them into fighting each other and get them all in this big old thing going on over there. We supply them with all the weapons and everything else and the jeeps and stuff, right? And then after we get them in this big mix, we just snatch it all away. You pull the carpet out from under their feet and snatch everything. So it's crazy. So anyway, guys, it's just so much. I mean, I can go on and on, but this is just part 1. There's a lot more I'm going to get into next week. And just continue for maybe 2 or 3 episodes, maybe 3 or 4 episodes of this. We got to really dig deep into what in the world are people running around here believing in? What in the world and who in the world are they praying to? We haven't even that's a whole nother episode. We're going to tap into who they're praying to on the next episode. They're not praying to God. I'll leave you with this one take. So another guy, people are always trying to convert me into Christianity because they see me walking around with this Eye of Horus all the time, right? I used to have the bigger one on my other clothes, right? They would see me walking around with it on my hats and stuff. And right away, they think it's some devil worship, whatever. And they want to convert me. They want to save me, you know? They want to take me out of damnation and all this kind of stuff. And so this one guy, once again, he wants to convert me into Christianity, and he's talking to me, and he's talking, and I'm just listening to him. And he starts talking about Satan the devil. I said, tell me more about this Satan the devil guy. Now, don't keep in mind, anytime I ask you a question, I already know the answer. If I ever ask you a question, I already know the answer. I said, tell me more about this Satan guy. Tell me more about this guy. I want to know more about him. He starts telling me, oh, he was a cherubim. He wasn't even an angel. And he was, the right-hand seat of God at one point. He was the highest, above all the angels. He was so smart and intelligent. He was just underneath God in terms of intelligence and everything else. And he was so beautiful. Everywhere he went, music followed him and blah, 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 blah. I said, wow, I said, so IQ is pretty high, right? Very intelligent. Oh, super intelligent on the level of God. Wow, that's incredible. Interesting. I said, so this super intelligent being is talked about in your Bible, right? Yes. And so what happens to him? Oh, well, he's let out to deceive mankind a couple of times, and in the end, he's cast into this lake of fire for all eternity. I said, really? Interesting. He's cast into a lake of fire for all eternity. I said, and who wrote this book called the Bible? Oh, well, the disciples. I said, no, I had to correct them. The disciples didn't write the Bible. The Bible was written by followers of Thoth Hermes in 180 to 900 AD. Let's get it. Let's get the facts right now. He says, well, either way, he's going to burn in the lake of fire. I said, but did men write this text? Yeah. I said, so, but they were under the guidance of God himself. I said, really? Okay. I said, I'll give you that. Maybe you believe that. I'm not going to rob you of that. But let's take a look at this for a second. You're talking about a being that's so highly intelligent that he is one notch below the creator of the universe, maybe even universes, maybe even the multiverse, right? His IQ is astronomical, off the charts. A human is not even a rock. A human is dumber than a rock to this entity. And you're telling me that this entity with all this intellect, all this intelligence, all this power is going to follow every word that's written in this book to the T, to its own demise? Yes. I said, I have a problem with that. I don't think that's accurate. What I do believe is that this entity has helped to construct and organize this book in this particular format and way that it is, so that the majority of the people on the planet would follow it and chase it and pray to him and follow it to their own demise. And his brain caught on fire. What Christians don't understand is they're actually following and chasing and praying to the actual Satan, the same one that they're actually running from. And that is what we'll go over and pick up in episode number 2 on the podcast next week. All right. I appreciate every single one of you guys. Love you guys. This podcast was not meant to demean anybody or hurt anybody. It's just sometimes the truth actually does hurt. Sometimes it cuts like a real knife. And if this information dug into you a little bit, then maybe you need to start doing some research, because if you're basing your eternity on one book and one book only, you better know every single stitch of every word like I did. I broke the Bible down from front to back, back to front. I took it from the King's English to Aramaic, Arabic, took it down into Hebrew, all the way back into Sumerian. If you're not doing that, an Indian, if you're not doing that, you're not really studying and researching. If you're just looking at a concordance is just a validation of the bullcrap, lies, and fabricated information. You must begin to do better work. You must begin to do better research. Stop listening to people who stand in front of a thing and just tell you everything and run away with it like it's the gospel, right? You need to find out for yourself, what in the hell are you involved in, and what in the heck does it mean? And who wrote this stuff, and who created this, and why? What's the purpose of this information? If you're not doing that, you're doing yourself a disjustice, and all the future generations coming ahead of you are going to be screwed up, wasting time, wasting energy, following a bunch of stuff that doesn't even resonate with you once you finally realize what it really is. All right. That's the purpose of this information. All right. We're going to go in on part 2 of the origins of religion. And I'm going to kind of go into the next area that I was kind of really alluding to last week. But an hour is a very short period of time. I mean, some of these topics you can talk about for 15, 20, 30 hours, obviously, because there's so much information and so much content and so many questions. And so it's something that could last for a long time. Last week, we talked about religion, the origins of religion, and I touched on a lot of different topics and some theories as well. I talked about the cargo cults. If you haven't seen that video, you need to go back and watch it. I talked about the cargo cults, how when a more advanced civilization meets a less advanced civilization, the lesser advanced civilization deifies that more advanced civilization automatically. They just automatically assume that they're gods. All right, that's kind of how it really works, and it's been like that for millennia, for eons. This is it's nothing new. It's typically what happens in any society, and I mean any society during any era. If you look back at history, you'll find that this has happened literally dozens and dozens of times. And even in this era that we are in now, you would think that, oh, we're so technologically advanced and we've got all this knowledge and wisdom and blah, 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 and we wouldn't be fooled. But there are people on this planet, you got to remember 85% of the world is very religious. And so there's people on this planet that would still fall for it if another advanced civilization came and visited us today, right now. They would automatically deify them. Or let's say one person only showed up, all right? That person would be deified instantaneously because it would appear that they had superpowers when in actuality it was probably metaphysical technology. In other words, a combination of spiritual and actual tech that you can combine together. And we are now experimenting with those same exact technologies in laboratories all around the world. Okay. So today last week we talked about some of the, you heard me talk about the Enuma Elish. You heard me talk about the Atra Hasis many times. You heard me say the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita and some of these texts. But let me show you what I'm talking about here. First of all, if I'm talking about something, that means I actually have it. That means I've actually gone through and read it, right? I'm not one of these people that has all this information to talk off the top of the head without actually being able to back it up. So let's look at, okay, we have here, what's this? The Enuma Elish. This is the Enuma Elish. This is the 7 tablets of creation right here. Now, obviously, it's written originally in Sumerian cuneiform, and now it's been converted into many different languages, and you can actually get this, and you can actually read it for yourself. So you don't have to rely on he say, she say. You don't have to rely on a YouTube video. You can actually go and read it for yourself and get your own discernment out of it, right? I remember when I first came across the Enuma Elish, I was studying cuneiform. The ability to read Sumerian tablets. It's all in here. These are my books. This is just one of 4 cuneiform books that I actually have. I'm actually going to do a video where I take some wet clay and a stylus, which is what they call the thing that you use to actually press into the clay. And I'm going to write some words into wet clay. Not today. I'll do that probably on the next one. And I'll show you how to write in cuneiform. Okay. No, Zachariah Sitchin isn't the only person that knew about cuneiform. Okay. There's literally thousands of people that known about it. And many people before Zachariah Sitchin was even born had already translated the tablets. Zachariah Sitchin is a great man. He didn't translate any tablets. That's a big lie that was going on to make him look like he was hoarding some kind of secret information. No, he wasn't hoarding any secret information. The guy took existing translations and wrote books about them. And he was brilliant for doing that because he gave us a glimpse or an idea into what might have happened in the ancient past. And he sparked a lot of researchers, and I'm one of them as well. But anybody can learn cuneiform. It's not some kind of hidden thing that you can't learn, and you got to be some kind of incredible scholar. It just takes application of time and will and patience. Okay, you heard me mention the Atra Hasis. Here's the epic of Atra Hasis, or the Atra Hasis. And the Atra Hasis epic, I should say, depending on how you want to say it. Sometimes it's epic first and then Atra Hasis, or reversed. But again, this tablet is extremely similar to this tablet, both in cuneiform and both written in 2 different eras, but still thousands and thousands of years ago. I mean, thousands. As a matter of fact, both of these texts right here, which make up the majority of the Old Testament, were written. These are copied. In other words, the stones were copied. Stones were copied again, and the stones were copied again, and the stones were copied again. These stories potentially go back maybe even 40, 50,000 years. And what people would do is they would take a tablet and they would copy it onto a new stone and a new stone and a new stone to make, like you're creating a published book. They would make copies. Okay. And sometimes in future copies, some texts would get edited and changed. Some pieces that were missing would leave it up to the copiers, I guess, their understanding or the way that they perceive what the missing pieces are. Because as you can see, there's always little tiny pieces that chip away, right? Pretty interesting stuff. So, but it's interesting that the majority of the copies, and we know there have been, are extremely similar. They're not that far off, right? Some of the missing areas are left up to interpretation of the different people that have made the copies, but that's actually kind of normal with the human race. That's kind of what always happens with information, right? Um, you've heard me mention the Bhagavad Gita. Here it goes, right? The Bhagavad Gita. And so the Bhagavad Gita is very interesting because it also is, some of this is actually in the book of Deuteronomy. All right, the book of Deuteronomy. Some of this information from the Bhagavad Gita made it into there. Again, some more Old Testament stuff. Then we have the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Right, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. You probably didn't even know this book existed. This is a super ancient text, and a lot of this has made it into Proverbs, made it into the Old Testament. This is incredible stuff right here. It's a great, great book. You got to check it out. This one here, man, I had to go through this, a few times. The Tibetan Book of the Dead. I also have another book here, which I didn't get a chance to bring over to this my desk tonight, but it's the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And it's actually the Egyptian Book of Going Forth by Day, which is the real name of the text. And in my version, I have the Papyrus of Ani. And a lot of that information, including the information that made it into the into Moses's tablets, which were the first airdrop tablets, right? They came from the cloud. Those 10 commandments, they actually come from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and a lot of other texts in there, as well as a lot of proverbs came from that book as well. But I have that in my other room. I don't want to walk away from the camera right now. And then we have the Code of Hammurabi. Okay, the Code of Hammurabi. More Babylonian texts that make up some parts of the Old Testament as well. Okay, the Code of Hammurabi. I'm showing you these things because it's not, I don't want you guys listening to what I got to say and going, man, this guy knows everything. We should just listen to him and don't do any research. No. I'm showing you these for a reason, so you can do some of your own research. Here goes another book, Learn to Read Ancient Sumerian. Okay, this is actually my favorite one here. This really breaks it down in an easy way, and you can actually duplicate this pretty easily right off the bat and start learning how to read Sumerian and cuneiform tablets on your own, right? It just takes application, time, and patience. Okay, application, time, and patience. So you don't have to rely on other people's translations. You can come up with your own concept, your own idea of what the information's saying, right? All right. I've taught in the Egyptian mystery schools, and I taught hieroglyphs, Egyptian hieroglyphs. And here goes one of the simplest books to start with for how to learn how to read Egyptian hieroglyphs, the language of light, right? That's what hieroglyphs are. The Egyptian hieroglyphs are literally the language of light. So you want to definitely get into that. And you've heard me talk about the Mahabharata a lot. Well, here it goes, guys. It's heavy. Here's the Mahabharata. It's a 10-volume set. Okay, it's a 10-volume set. And the information in here is absolutely incredible. It reads like a Star Wars movie. It literally reads like a Star Wars movie. And so, you have to get these texts if you want to get to the next level, and you want to learn, and you want to be able to regurgitate the information that I'm putting out. I'm giving you the sources, right? I'm giving you the sources of the information. A lot of people have heard about Enoch. As a matter of fact, he's revered in the biblical text, but his actual book was left out of the Bible. This is Enoch, the book of Enoch. I actually have a couple of versions of the book of Enoch, just because some add a little bit more of a compendium to the information, right? So, and I have a third one somewhere up here. I got, I don't know, hundreds of books in this house, maybe 1,000 plus. Some in the closet in cases that I haven't even unpacked yet. But the book of Enoch is very interesting because in the book of Enoch, he's talking about beings that came down from the heavens. And these beings were flesh and blood people. And not only were they flesh and blood people, but they interacted with humans and they taught us how to make weapons of war to attack one another. Not only did they teach us how to make weapons of war, they went to war with us. They went to battle. They had to put on protection. What type of angel do you know that has to put on protection against getting cut? So these were people, flesh and blood people like me and you, just a little bit more advanced technologically from another place, but still our cousins in a way because we look like them and they look us. They were distinguishable by the shapes of their heads. Uh, that's what really distinguished them, according to some of these texts. But the book of Enoch was omitted and not put into the canonized Bible because he's talking about aliens interacting with people. Period, point blank. There's no way to get around it. As a matter of fact, Enoch had an appointed time with these beings where he would be taken into space. And it was an appointed time. He wasn't abducted. He wasn't stolen away. He wasn't such a good person and worshiper that he was whisked away. It was an appointed time. And he even gave his records of his business and everything to his sons to hold. When the day came, he was taken into the vehicle and taken up into space. He even describes the Earth's shape and color as he's taken up into space. And then he's brought back at a later time. So he wasn't taken away permanently and forever. He did come back. All right. So pretty interesting stuff. So what we see here, and the reason why I'm, talking this stuff is because we have to understand that there are two different things operating in terms of belief systems on the planet. One belief system is based off of religion, and people tend to get religion confused with spirituality. That's why I'm doing an entire workshop in December 11th. It's free. It doesn't cost you any money. You can register on Eventbrite. As a matter of fact, I'll get the link and drop it in this chat. It's a free workshop I'm doing. It's called Religion versus Spirituality. And the purpose is not to bash religion, but it's to awaken you to the understanding that a lot of the stuff that you're reading in a lot of the what I call modern religious texts is actually copied information, and it's actually just plagiarized information in a way that's set up to control the masses. True spirituality, you can directly connect with the creator without having to go through a group of middlemen or middle people. You don't have to go to the temple in a physical building because the temples are right here. This is your temple. Your body is the temple. And so the true wisdom of ascension and ascension knowledge is learning how to quantum entangle with the universal consciousness. Some call it God, whatever, nature, whatever you want to call it. That is the true ultimate goal. That you should be your true ultimate goal for ascension. The other systems that have been put in place direct you through man, and through man, everything is corrupted. Like Tupac said, everything is corrupted once a man touch it. A lot of the text has been altered. A lot of the text has been purposefully left out. The entire Apocrypha has been left out, which I have the Apocrypha. I think it's upstairs. Those are books of the Bible that should be in there, but were left out by the Council of Nicaea because they were deemed too hot, too steamy, too crazy. A lot of them talk about human beings being extremely wise in the very beginning. For example, you have the myth of Adapa, which talks about the fact that Ea Enki tells Adapa, who's Adam, tells him that he was created even wiser than the Anunnaki, that there's a hidden code inside of us. And in that hidden code, once we tap into it, we become wiser, we become better, we can even advance past and beyond where these Anunnaki beings were. And for that, Enlil, his brother, was completely enraged when he found out what was going on, what Enki had done. He was completely enraged. And it really pissed him off, So you have to understand that a lot of these texts are a lot of the information that made it into this book right here come from ancient text. Okay. Even in some people say, well, what about the New Testament? Well, even in the New Testament, there are places in my book, Compendium of the Emerald Tablet, where I distinctly go through and make the comparisons between the Old Testament and also, the New Testament. And it really breaks it down in a way where you can see everywhere where Jesus is actually speaking, his words actually come from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which are 36,000 years old. So which came first, the chicken or the egg? Now, why would there be that similarity in information and context? Why would his teachings be extremely similar to the teachings of Thoth, the Atlantean priest king, who ruled over the land of Chem for 14,000 years, around 56,000 BC? Why would that be? Okay. Well, the reason why that would be is simply because if you have the Gospel of the Holy 12, which is also missing from the Bible, if you have the Gospel of the Holy 12, you discover that when Jesus was 12 years old, he disappears from the Bible, and he's in this text. And where he goes is he goes to Egypt. He goes to Egypt for what? To study the Egyptian mysteries. Who invented the first Egyptian mystery school? Or it really was called the Kemetic Mysteries. Who developed that? They were developed by Thoth, the Atlantean priest king. So where did Jesus go? Really, his name was not Jesus. His name was Yeshua. Jesus is actually not a real name. But where did Yeshua go? Yeshua went to the land of Chem to learn, and he became an adept initiate to learn the Egyptian mysteries or the Kemetic mysteries. And in there, he learned all of the teachings that are in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth and beyond. So when he's speaking in the New Testament, the reason why a lot of what he's saying is matching the Emerald Tablets is because that's where it came from. Just like if I go to school, right? I took a course at MIT in applied neuroscience. And in that course, they talk about how, the human body emits this magnetic field from the heart, and this magnetic field wraps around the body like a torus. This is what they teach at MIT. This is not just a spiritual post, a meme on social media. And if somebody is nervous, frustrated, scared, anxiety, and their cortisol's level raised, their cortisol actually comes out through their skin and wraps around through that magnetic field that's wrapping around their body. And anybody who interacts with that magnetic field can pick up those heightened cortisol levels, and it can raise their cortisol levels and their stress levels. So just like I told you that, how did I say that exact thing? How did I copy? Where did I come up with that? Well, I learned that when I went to class at MIT, right? Just like when Yeshua went to class at the mystery schools. That's why what he's saying here is extremely similar to what's being said in the biblical, in the Emerald Tablets. What he's saying in the Bible is extremely similar to what's being said in the Emerald Tablets. So I cover that. There's quite a few verses in here that I go side by side that you can read in my book, where I show you the biblical verse, and then I show you where Jesus is speaking, or Yeshua. Then I show you the Emerald Tablets verse, and you go, oh, this is saying the same thing. But again, which came first, the chicken or the egg? One text is tens of thousands of years older than the other. And so what he's doing is he's, the people who wrote the Bible were the Phoenicians. Who were the Phoenicians? The Phoenicians were followers of who? This guy. The people that wrote the text on the parchment papers and the cylinder scrolls and all that stuff that make up the Bible, because the Bible wasn't written like just write a Bible from page 1 to page whatever. People were copying tablets and turning them into writing them on paper and different types of parchments, and storing them in vases and studying them in caves and so forth, right? And so basically, people over the years had uncovered some of these things in these different caves and locations around the Middle East, and began to put them together and create this, what we call a Bible. The Bible wasn't written by somebody standing there right next to somebody who was supposedly speaking and writing on everything that was going on. In other words, the Bible was not written in real time. Matter of fact, the disciples, they were actually illiterate men. They couldn't even read or write. Okay. They couldn't even read or write. So that answers a lot of questions for you there. The Bible was written thousands of years after these people died. Matter of fact, it wasn't starting to be put together until 100 AD to 900 AD. That's the time frame that the biblical text was extracted, discovered from caves and so forth, and cultivated into what we call the canonized Bible. Okay. This is handpicked, curated information, just like, you know, I'm a music artist, right? And so I submit my music to a lot of streaming services. One streaming service in particular is Pandora. Now, Pandora is not like Spotify or Apple Music or Deezer or Tidal. Pandora actually curate all the music that they accept into their platform. So if you submit to Pandora submit your music to Pandora, it may or may not get accepted. They handpick what they want. They actually have a human being that actually listens to your music and actually puts it in there. Okay. Um, so this is incredible. So this is the same system that the Bible was written in. Okay. Now, what's interesting is this Bible has good information in it. There's good information in that book. There's actually great information in the book. You have to know how to discern what's good and what's actually not good. There's things in there that will make you think it's okay to commit specific types of crimes against other people because it's being ordered by God, when in reality, it's not God. See, until you get some of these texts that I've got here in these books and learn how to read cuneiform and learn how to, my Aramaic book is upstairs, convert some of this text backwards into Aramaic and start reading that, you start finding out what areas are actually not being prudent for mankind to follow. So just like in anything, you have to have discernment, right? I can take this book and I can handpick verses. I can curate information out of this book. I can handpick verses that if you listen to them, if you read them, if you study them, and if you actually act on them, you can actually get a good result. Okay. That's why I read everything. That's why I study. I'm a student of everything. Now, there's information in here that's not so good. Like in the book of Deuteronomy, it okays things like rape. It okays things like abduction, right? False imprisonment. All those things are in there. Why? Because God is commanding people to actually do these things to other people. But it's not actually the creator of the universe that's speaking in the book of Deuteronomy. When you translate the book of Deuteronomy into its original text, you find out that it's gods with an S, plural, and those gods end up not being gods at all. They end up being flesh and blood people. That's why you have to learn Sumerian. They come out of Sumeria, and they're called the Anunnaki, or in the Bible, they're called the Anak. In our eyes, we were grasshoppers in their sight. That's what it says in the Bible. These people were huge people as well, but they were very intelligent and technologically advanced people. They ruled over humans in certain regions of the planet, and they had humans fighting each other because just like we do today, they would send a person. You'll go to college and you say, you go to school, high school, and you'd be like, I want to go to college, but I can't afford college. And so what will you do? You say, well, if I join the military, as I saw a TV commercial, they're going to give me money. They're going to give me money to pay for college, or they're going to pay for my college. So you join up with them, and then somebody in a $10,000 suit sends you halfway around the world with a $5 million weapon to blow up a guy on a camel with a $5 tent. And in your mind, you reconcile that as, I'm not a bad person. I'm just following orders. All right. And in return, I'm going to get this college education. So if you take this back into the ancient times in the book of Deuteronomy, for example, where you see all these wars happening, where you have the quote unquote God talking and telling people to go to this city and kill the women, kill the children. It even says rape the women. That's the exact terminology. It's right here in the Bible. Look it up. Rape the women. You can actually take the virgins if you want. That's abduction, right? You can, false imprisonment. You can take the virgins and all that kind of good stuff. You can take the spoils, but bring the spoils back to me. This is a war going on against people that had masqueraded as gods and used human beings as chattel to fight their battles, just like they do today. A guy in a $10,000 suit sends a kid halfway around the world to kill somebody so we can steal oil. The same thing happens right now. Same thing was happening back then. They send you halfway around the world to go infiltrate a city and kill all the people and bring the spoils of war. And now that God, lowercase g, owns that property, owns that castle or that land, and now has control and rulership over it, and just gaining more control. There were these battles of the gods back in the day. These battles are in the Mahabharata, which I just showed you. The battles are in the Bhagavad Gita, which I just showed you. The battles are in the biblical text, in the book of Deuteronomy. The battles persist all throughout all the texts that I have. The book of Enoch, they teach you how to make weapons so we can go to war. I mean, I can just keep going on and on and on. And so what's interesting is this creates this warring mentality in mankind. This is one of the biggest problems that I have with believing in religion and not following the spiritual path. In religion, you become a zealot, and a zealot is extremely dangerous, okay? A zealot is extremely, extremely dangerous. Why? Because a zealot will do anything for the entity that they are worshiping or the subject or topic that they're worshiping. They will do anything that they believe is needed, including injure, hurt, or kill somebody. What you find when you look at ancient history and you look at the wars on this planet, you discover that the majority of the wars that happened on this planet were for religious reasons. In other words, more people have died due to religion than any other reason on the face of the earth. Again, like I talked about last week, the papal inquisitions. In order to bring Catholicism around the world, the popes for 700 years killed over 50 million people on this planet, killed and tortured. And if you don't believe this, just go to the museums. They actually have the museums. They're so proud of what they did. They have museums that show these death tools, okay? They have the Pope's spear. You know what that was? If you were a woman and you didn't want to worship their Lord and Savior the way that they wanted you to, if you didn't believe in that, or you were an indigenous person, right? Because they conquered these different cultures. What they would do is they take you, the chiefess of the town, of the tribe, and string her up and put this Pope's spear inside of your private part. The Pope's spear would then expand like this and pop on the inside and blow up the woman's private part. And then, of course, you would just bleed to death. What a horrible way to die. Then they had this other thing which looked like a pyramid with a spire on top, a very sharp, needle-looking spire on top, right? And that spire, what they would do is they would actually take a man. Let's say they came to your town, right, your tribe, and you guys weren't falling in line. Well, let me take the chief, and I'm going to tie him up to this tree, and I'm going to raise him up, and I'm going to drop him through the anus onto the spire, onto this very sharp stick coming out of this pyramid looking thing. They have this inside the museum, and they would raise you and drop you, raise you and drop you, raise you and drop you, while your entire tribe or your entire town watched this. And what was the purpose of that? The purpose was to force you into saying, okay, we're going to fall in line and we're going to worship this thing, because if we don't, we're going to end up tortured like this. And by that method, over the course of 700 years, they tortured and killed over 50 million people. This is actual history. That made Hitler look like an angel. I mean, think about the comparison here. I mean, he killed 6 million. These people killed 50 million. So when you hear people saying that the good news was spread around the world, Christianity was spread around the world by love and everything else, no. Every country, every indigenous continent was invaded. The women and the men were murdered, killed, and raped and beaten into submission in order to take on this religious belief system. That's how it happened. If you look at the Arabs, right? You look at their Muslim belief. That was also put out there, and how they got dominant with it was to go and murder and kill. If you go to Egypt, whoever goes to Egypt with me this October, right? October this year, I think we're almost sold out. You better hurry up if you want to get a seat. We're only taking really 40 people. When we go to Egypt, we go to Coptic Cairo. Coptic Cairo is one of the oldest areas of Christianity that existed before the birth of Jesus. And in Coptic Cairo, the house where Jesus actually lived is still there. Yeshua, I actually was in that house now twice. I've been there. It's a shrine. He actually lived there while he attended the Egyptian mystery schools. And so you find there the history of the slaughter of the Arabs. You see, the people in Egypt, they never spoke Arabic. They never spoke Arabic. That's not their language. Just like Mexicans don't speak Spanish. Those people ain't Spanish. They're not Latinos. Those people are Mayans and Aztecs and so forth. And so what happened was the Arabs came there and they slaughtered and murdered so many people and forced them into speaking Arabic, which they still speak till this very day. They banished them from learning their own Egyptian hieroglyphs. So after generation, by the second generation, they didn't even know how to read hieroglyphs anymore. They just started teaching hieroglyphs 4 years ago in Egypt again in school. They had to rely on Germany and Japan and other archaeologists from other countries to learn how to teach them how to learn and read their own hieroglyphs. So it's pretty interesting. So again, that's another religious cult that had dominated the world at one time, and still is up and running. And when you look at the history of, like I talked about last week, where their belief system comes from, it comes from aliens. It comes from aliens. Right? This alien descends down and talks to this guy and tells him, hey, write this down. This guy can't read or write, so he has to hire another guy to come scribe what he's being told. And they turn that whole thing into a religion. Meanwhile, it suppresses women. It oppresses women. It's got things in there that if you don't obey it as a woman, you can be stoned to death and killed, just like in the Old Testament. And something that resonates with those two religions is the fact that the female energy, the female frequency has been completely suppressed, which is another big problem. So you have the suppression of the feminine energy. And this is why when you go to Egypt, and when you go with me, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It looks like a giant bachelor pad. The whole Middle East looks like a giant bachelor pad. Why? There's no feminine energy in there. No feminine energy. Everything is brown. There's no colors. There's no different alternating colors. There's no flowers and plants. Everything is brown. Everything is dirty. Garbage in the streets. All right. And why is that? Because women have no say-so in anything. It's like a giant bachelor pad. And so it's missing the feminine energy. And it's evident. Now, you take that same concept and apply it to anything in life where the feminine energy has been completely wiped out or taken away, especially in religious contexts where women couldn't even walk into a synagogue. They couldn't walk into a temple. They couldn't walk into a church. That just started happening in modern times. That's just started happening. So it really surprises me these days when there's women out here that are, calling God a him and a he, because they don't even understand that again is that male dominance thing again. It's the male energy dominance. God is not a man. There is no man that's a God. God is not a man. God is a frequency. Just like everything in this entire universe is a frequency. If you go into quantum physics and quantum mechanics, you discover that everything that exists in this entire universe is actually waves of potential. And those waves of potential exist as waves of light. Light that we can't see with the human naked eye because we only see 1% of the light spectrum, right? We only see 1% of the light spectrum. We can't see gamma rays. We can't see X-rays. We can't see ultraviolet. We can't see the multispectrum. We can't see any of that stuff. What we can see is only the colors of the rainbow, and that's it. That's all we get. Pretty much RGB is the maximum that we can really focus on. But we know that other colors exist because we have computers and technology and cameras that can pick up these other frequencies of light and waves of light. And they've discovered that every single atom exists as a wave of light before it collapses into something that we consider to be solid, right? And what's happened is in the universe itself as a whole, there's a balance. There's a yin and a yang, right? And in a system that we've now created on Earth with religion, we've only got the yin, no yang. There's no balance there. So in a lot of the religions, the reason why they're so detrimental, when they actually, some of them could be prosperous and actually help people, the reason why over time you see that they actually have been very bloody and unsuccessful is because of the complete removal of feminine energy, to the point where even women think that God is a man. And so that concept and that twist in the brain that has been handed down from generation to generation has altered a way that we even perceive the creator of the universe. Right. And we've gotten so cocky with it that we even perceive that the creator of the universe is actually in here with us, hanging out and wanting us to win basketball games and wanting us to win wars and all this kind of crazy stuff. There is no creator of the universe that is hanging out, hanging around, waiting for you to pray if you can win a football game. There is no creator of the universe hanging around waiting for you to pray if you can win this war and you can kill these people over here and come home safely. Doesn't exist. I'm sorry, it just doesn't exist. Right? What you can do is, if you're a competitor, you can pray that you can perform at your highest level, right? But you think that there's somebody out there with a magic wand waving it saying, "Oh, this team deserves to win today." And then when they win, "Oh, yeah, God was good to us." No, no, you just had talent. You followed the game plan and you actually won the game because you worked hard and you practiced and you trained and you made the right decisions in the game and you won. All right? That's how it works out. There's a verse in the Bible where Jesus is standing outside talking to a small multitude of people, and his disciples are there. And there are some buildings off in the distance that are really old buildings. The tops of them are really dilapidated, and it's a very windy day. And two or three women were walking by the building when the wind blew. And when the wind blew, those stones from the top of that dilapidated structure fell and crushed them right there where they were walking. And right away, the disciples said, "Oh, they died for their sins. They were evil." And Jesus said, in so many words, "No, man, they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time." You see, we take things out of context. We take things and we turn them into something that's really not there. And why we do that as people, I'm not quite sure. But there is one small answer that's possible. There was a study done about maybe, I think it was now 9 years ago, in a laboratory where biologists were accessing the human genome, and they discovered a gene that we have. It's called the worship gene. The interesting thing about this worship gene, two things actually. One thing is they discovered that it was inserted into the human genome about 200,000 years ago. Now, why is that significant? Well, that's significant because where's this book at? According to the ancient Sumerian tablets, right? According to the Sumerian tablets, about 200,000 years ago is when mankind was genetically modified and forced to do the labor of the gods. That's why it's ironic. And the biologists and the scientists said it's 200,000 years ago, but we can't figure out how, because in order for this mutation to occur, it would take millions and millions of years of evolution. It looks like this was purposefully done. Well, yeah, it was purposefully done. They then turn the gene off. They learn how to turn the gene on and turn the gene off. When they turn the gene off, the person is no longer who want to worship any outside source. They focus on self. They look, when they turn the gene on, the person seeks for exterior gratification, exterior deity, exterior help. This is a gene, in my opinion, that was inserted at the time that telomere chromosome number 2 was cut out and fused together, and the telomere caps were put on. That's in the Tower of Babel incident. At the same time, I believe that they also inserted the worship gene. And what better slave to have is a slave that doesn't know it's a slave. So when you go to Egypt, you find that the people that worked on these pyramids, because the pyramids were labored on by actual people. Now, the architectural guide and the floor plan came from higher above, came from Thoth, the Atlantean priest king, for example, at the Great Pyramid. He was the master architect of that structure. The people did the work under his tutelage and his training and using his technology. However, what you find when you go there is they weren't slaves. There were no slaves building any pyramids in Egypt, not one. That information that talks about people being slaves in Egypt inside this book is actually false. When you go to Egypt directly, like I've been a few times, you find out that not only were they working out of their own, want and need to appease the gods, but they were also getting paid, and they even had health care. Yeah, health care. Thousands of years ago, they had health care. And when you go to Egypt with me, you're going to go to these locations. You're going to see the temples and the buildings and the structures where the workers would check in to go to work. They worked out of only one thing: to please the gods. They were paid very little. They were taken care of if they became injured, but they didn't realize that they were slaves. When they had the days when you would have to give your atonement, and you would have to go make your sacrifice and bring in your, cut up your, slice the throat of your calf, and bring in your first harvest, right? All those things. You're going to find out when you come to Egypt with me what that was for. That was for these people to get food and eat. They have the temples there, which we're going to visit the temples. And in these temples, they have these storehouses where when all these offerings would come, those offerings, because these people were not going to go out and hunt. They were not going to farm. They weren't going to go grow any crops. No, you bring me the food and the crops, and then I'm going to pretend to be your God, and I'm going to say, yeah, I bless you. And you go about your business. All right. You're going to find this out when you go to Egypt with me. And so they would store all this food in these storehouses that they had, these locked containers that they would have in the back in some of these temples. And it was purely for the gods to eat. Now, when I say gods, I do mean lowercase g. These are the Anunnaki people. They were just for them to have food. And they weren't going to go kill no cows. They weren't going to grow no cattle and all this kind of stuff. You just got pimped. And we're still getting pimped today the same exact way. You got the worship gene. You want to worship something on the outside. Everybody's focusing on the outside, outside, outside. Nobody's focusing on the inside. That's where the big problem arises. When you're looking external for external salvation, I guarantee you will never find it. You will think you found it. You will convince yourself that you found external salvation. But in true reality, you only tricked yourself. The only way to receive a salvation is to go within. And you don't need any exterior source to forgive you and all this kind of stuff. You can forgive yourself. Matter of fact, until you forgive yourself, you're never going to be forgiven. Until you forgive I don't care if you hurt somebody, you did something to somebody, and then you apologize to them and they say, I forgive you. You're still not forgiven. Your conscience is still not fully satisfied until you actually look at your shadow face to face and say, man, I screwed this up bad. You know what? I apologize to them. I try to make everything right. And now all I can do is move forward. And you know what? I forgive myself. I have to learn from it. What can I learn from this? How can I become a better person from this experience? What can I glean from this mistake that I made? And once you understand that, and once you accept that, and once you understand how to change from that, you've now rewritten your DNA. You've just been born again. Yeah, that's it. There's no magic sky daddy out there coming down to hit you with a wand and say, oh, all your sins are forgiven. Like I said last week, the biggest problem with this forgiven sin thing is it gives people a way to escape taking full ownership of their screw ups. In other words, I can go out here and I can do something to somebody. I can blow somebody away. And then I can just go home and say, oh, please forgive me. And then the next thing you know, I'm good to go again. That's how they think it works. You see, that there's a big problem with that. That's actually doesn't work. You're fooling yourself. And so people use it as a crutch. Oh, I screwed up today. Oh, please forgive me. And then, I got a clean slate. That's what they tell you in church. Doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. Even if you read this book, this book doesn't even say it works that way. The Bible doesn't even say it works that way. And so what you have to do is you have to understand that you need to understand what you did. You need to face what you did, try to make atonement for what you did. And then after you've done all of that, forgive yourself and move on. That's forgiveness. Being born again is when you rise to a higher level of consciousness, and you can look back on your previous level that you were at and go, wow, man, I came up here. I'm up here now. I moved up a notch. You were born again in a higher level of consciousness. Getting splashed in water and dumped in the ocean and all that stuff, waste of time. Means nothing. Waste of time. Taking a brand new baby and splashing water all over them, waste of time. Means nothing. Means absolutely nothing. Does nothing. It just gets you wet, and then you need a towel. Being born again has to do with growing consciously. Every time you move up another notch, you're born again, and you'll be born again many times in the same lifetime. These are the secrets that the Anunnaki us and didn't want us to understand and know. They wanted us to go through them for everything so that we can continue to worship them and do the work for them. That's what it was all about. It's all about labor and slavery. And if you don't believe me, then you got to read the Atrahasis epic. This is where the information is. It's right in here, guys. It's right in here. Part of it made it into the Bible, but they accidentally on purpose left out the part where the Ijiji were getting ready to go to war against Enlil and Enki. This is when the gods fell from heaven to earth, right? In the Bible, it's the angels. They rebelled against God. These Ijiji people, who are Anunnaki, they rebelled against Anu, who was known as the god of his pantheon. He had the original pantheon, and they fell from heaven to earth. They came from Mars to earth. They came from Lamu to Ki. All right, Lamu is Mars, Ki is Earth. Why'd they come here? They were on Mars doing a lot of labor. They were mining Mars for resources. They came here to go to battle against Enki and Enlil. Why did they rebel against Anu and his sons? Because according to the text, they were being forced to do labor as if they were slaves, and they weren't supposed to be slaves. They were volunteers, and they labored for a couple 100,000 years. I think it was 250,000 years they labored without the use of any human assistance whatsoever. And then they got to the point where they said, you know what? Our needs aren't being met. Our demands aren't being met. We're going to go to war. They came and they encircled the campus of Enki and Enlil in a place in Africa called Adam's Calendar. Adam's Calendar still exists today. Matter of fact, I was supposed to go there in 2020, but you know what happened there. I'll probably get there in 2023. I won't get there this summer. With Michael Tellinger has a museum right next to Adam's Calendar, and he's going to give me the tour of Adam's Calendar. Adam's Calendar is important because it's the oldest known gold mine discovered on Earth in Africa, and the organic material at the mine shows that it dates back to 200,000 years, exactly at the time I said about the worship gene, and exactly at the time that these people decided to go to war at Adam's Calendar against Enki and Enlil and Anu. Interesting that it all merges together. All right. And then they took women after they came to an agreement first that they would genetically modify the existing hominid on the planet, adding their essence to it, which means, some type of modification in some way, and make it do the labor. Once that was agreed upon, they said, okay, we're getting out of here now. We're not going to go to war today, but what we are going to do is we're going to take some of these women. And that's when the sons of God, which was the Ijiji, because they were all under Anu, made it with the daughters of men, and they gave birth to the Nephilim. Okay? All this is in the text, guys. This is all in the text. The Enuma Elish and the 7 tablets of creation. The Atrahasis epic. This is all in there. All this stuff is in there. The Sumerian tablets in the British Museum, the one where Isis gives birth to the Adamu. There were already a lot of people on the planet. Don't believe this thing about Adam and Eve were the first 2 people, and from Adam and Eve, you got 8 billion people on the planet. That's garbage. In the Bible itself, if you take your time and you actually read the Bible right, you discover that humans were created twice in the beginning. There's 2 humans that are created in the beginning. When you read the Sumerian tablets, you discover the same thing. In the beginning, it elaborates a little bit more. They created people to do the work. They took some of the people that they genetically modified and cloned them, and those people weren't able to mate. And because they weren't able to successfully mate, they weren't able to duplicate, and cloning was a very tedious process. They didn't have the manpower for that. So they started getting frustrated, but they did have a lot of people on the planet. And so what they did was they then did another experiment. Isis said, you know what? I'm going to take one of the women and I'm going to take her egg. I'm going to add our essence to it. That means some type of a genetic modification, or adding maybe the sperm. Maybe it's artificial infertilization. She inserts it into her womb. This is in Sumerian tablets. She then takes the term 10 months, not 9 months, but 10 months. It's very specific. In 10 months, she gives birth to the first Adamu, Adamu, which means first man. There's a picture of her etched into stone holding up the Adamu, saying, "My hands have created him." And that's at the British Museum. This predates all the biblical texts by thousands of years. She put him in the Eden, Edin, and that was in Mesopotamia, which is now modern day Iraq. It was an outdoor type of a enclosed laboratory where they began to experiment with the Adamu, raising him up, and then trying to get him to mate when he was of mating age with other people. It wasn't successful, so they actually took some blood from him, some samples from him. This is where we get the rib story. The tablets are very clear that they took blood from him, they took a sample from him and created a clone, which was Eve. And then when he made it with Eve, they were able to have a baby. This is all clear in the text, and it predates the biblical text by thousands of years. Now, to add more credence to the fact that there were people here, when Cain killed Abel and was kicked out of the Garden of Eden, which, by the way, Adam was also kicked out, and you can read the book of Adam, right? That's kept out of the Bible. It's pretty heartbreaking, that story. It's actually it'll choke you up. It's pretty heartbreaking. But when you analyze Cain, and he says to Enlil, who's known as Yahweh in the Bible, he says, the people out there will kill me. Well, what people? Well, there was already people out there. He said, matter of fact, he said, I'm gonna put a mark on you. They'll know you, my boy. And when you go out there, you're gonna meet your wife. What wife? This is what began the whole clan of the Canaanites. Most of the Canaanites ended up in Mesoamerica. They ended up halfway around the world. All right, there's a whole nother video I got to make about that and how they got there. But regardless, so you have the snake that comes into the garden. The snake is knowledge in Egypt, in Chem. It's knowledge and wisdom. What was the apple? The apple was knowledge of self. So Ea Enki, who actually loved humans, came in and was talking to them in the tablets about who they really were, how powerful they really were. A lot of that makes it into the myth of Adapa. So if you read the myth of Adapa, which I have on one of these, I have so many books in here, but I have the myth of Adapa. That text, which was kept out of the Bible, is it talks about the fact that Ea Enki was talking to them about how powerful they are, how knowledgeable they are, how incredible they could become. The true potential of mankind is far exceeding them, him himself and the Anunnaki. And that was the knowledge that he gave them. That's why they put on clothes. They were like, man, we gods, man. Here running around like animals naked. And that's when Enlil came back and got pissed off. That's in the Bible known as Yahweh, right? You call him God. And he was like, oh man, my brother did this. I'm going to call him the devil. And I'm going to tell everybody, don't talk to him because he's evil. When Enlil was actually the evil one. As a matter of fact, when you read the tablets, you find out that this guy, Enlil, was killing people like you wouldn't believe. He was killing humans like it was like if he would wake up and there was too much noise outside, he would order the guards to just go kill off people. If they were getting too many people in the population, once they figured out the code on how to make people mate, he would just dry out their fields. He would spray pestilence on them, the original chemtrails. Where do you think they get the idea from for the chemtrails? They got it from the tablets. And kill off people by the thousands. This is the kind of guy he was. He was extremely evil, but he claimed that his brother was evil, but his brother wasn't the evil one. It was actually him. He was the one that was evil. And that's why I think that the Nag Hammadi got it right. The Nag Hammadi. These are the Nag Hammadi scriptures. When you read the Gnostic text in here, you realize that they got it right in a lot of ways. Not always, but in a lot of ways. Because what they realized was that this book right here is orchestrated by people. Actually, the person that wrote the KJV, King James Version, he's a Satanist. So King James is actually a Satanist. Actually, his Satanist book did better than this book. So, but what these people realized way before that guy was even born was that this book is orchestrated in a way, the information is orchestrated in a way that you're actually following the same evil that you're running from. And the true path to enlightenment and ascension is through spirituality. Okay, which I'm going to do that whole workshop on spirituality and religion. I'm going to go deep into a lot of information, and we're going to compare spiritual practices with religious practices. That's going to be in December. You can sign up for that workshop. I'll drop the link in here again. All right, let me drop the link in this chat again for you. Sign up for free. Didn't cost you any money. And I'm going to go really deep into the two so you can see that the true path to enlightenment is through spirituality and metaphysics. And the path that was going to lead you to destruction is actually in this book. Like I said last week, if the devil is a super genius, right? Satan, the devil, is this IQ of 2,000. He's not even an angel. He's a cherubim. He can create things. He has everything he can do everything that God can do, just about. All right. He was the right hand and everything, all this good stuff. And he can whisper in the ears of millions of people. And he's got all this power. I said to that guy who was trying to convert me, he said to me, I told him, I asked him, I said, do you think that this Satan the devil is going to follow every word in this book that was written and edited by a human being to his own destruction? And he said, yeah. I said, no, no, no. Don't you think it's more likely that that same entity orchestrated this book in a way that would lead you to your destruction? That's what the Nag Hammadi believe. That's what the Gnostics believe. I'm sorry, the Gnostics. And I think they're right. I think that it's been flipped. I think that people that have been chasing after the devil this entire time, because the references of the Elohim and and Yahweh and so forth in the Bible are actually these Anunnaki people, not the creator of the universe. Not even close. These are flesh and blood people. Now, is there a creator of the universe? I actually believe that there is. I believe that there's a creator of the universe. Why? Quantum physics proves it. We're living in a creation. There's no way to get around that. We're living in a creation. I believe that wholeheartedly. What I'm trying to tell you is a lot of us on this planet have been chasing after the wrong source of creation, has actually been chasing after slave masters. And they have successfully enslaved mankind for a very, very long time. You got to read this book, The Gods of Eden by William Bramley. The Gods of Eden by William Bramley. It's based on Sumerian tablets. That's why I like this book. It's not based on opinion. It's not based on conjecture. It's based on the tablets. And we find that the mental and financial enslavement go all the way back thousands of years. In this book, he actually reveals the origin of inflation. The origin of inflation is even in here. You find that they set up this political structure for us with this bicameral Congress, which is still operating today. And they themselves had a whole different system that they went on, that they ruled under, this number system that they had. They had a system of numbers, and you ruled by your order of your hierarchy, and the totem pole was based on your number. But they gave us this polytrick system. I call it polytricks, right? That's what they gave us, the polytrick system, to keep us embroiled in foolishness. And then what they did was they installed a monetary system that was set up from the beginning to give us inflation, so that we can stay financially enslaved. So we have to continue to work hard until we die. And so how it was set up initially, you'll find out if you read this book, The Gods of Eden by William Bramley. Let's say you had a farm and you had goats, right? And I had an apple orchard. And now I want some goats because I want to have, I don't know, I want to have some meat for my family. And you want apples because you want apples so your wife can make apple pie or whatever. I bring you a satchel of apples, right? Maybe 2 satchels for 1 goat. Now, when I get there, there's no goats. There's a celebration coming. It's one of these, Passovers or something, and all the goats are gone. I got there too late. Now, what'll happen is and we know this because we found all the tablets that actually have the IOU. So what I'm telling you is fact, right? So what happens is we get you drop off your 2 satchels of apples, and the guy gives you a stone tablet, which we have found and we have records of, that says, okay, I owe you a goat. So you walk away with this money, this dollar or whatever you want to call it, fake stone money that says, you can come back and get your goat later. You come back about, I don't know, 3, 4 weeks, a month later, whatever it is. I really need to get this goat. You come back now because it's just a shortage and back order of goats. Guess what? That one IOU chipper for that goat is not enough to get a whole goat. You can only get half of a goat. You can only get half of a goat. Inflation right there. This is the system they put us on. They set this monetary system up for us. They knew exactly what it was going to do. It was going to put us in a situation where we'd always be in debt, and we'd work and work and work to try to pay off this debt, which means that we were working for them the whole time. You see, we're the prisoners and we're the prison guards. It's a great system. They got us fooled from front to back. This is what they did to us. And so now you go, damn, I can only get a half a goat. I don't have enough for a whole goat now because inflation happened. Supply and demand, right? This is the system that they set up, and they found over 1 million of these IOUs laying around. And so we've got these IOUs in museums and so forth, and in archaeological collections. So it's well known. It's not even hidden. But this was the very, very beginning. Okay, very, very beginning. Let me answer this one question right quick here too before I start to wrap this up. Somebody says, why do some people say the Anunnaki are reptilian? Now that's a good question. Anunnaki is not one race of people, by the way. Anunnaki means those that came from heaven to earth. So the Anunnaki could be any race of any person, any being from anywhere in the entire universe. It's not just one group of people. It's multitudes of people, right? So within the Anunnaki, you have some beings that look reptilian. You had the Ubaid people. It's pronounced Ubaid. Ubaid, right? You have the Ubaid people. And the Ubaid people, they look reptilian. There's statuettes of them. I actually have a couple of statuettes in my cabinet here of these Ubaid people. They actually, they found hundreds of them. Some of them look like they're more royalty and have a higher status. And some of them were just wearing loincloths, which means they were working status. There's Ubaid reptilian people breastfeeding babies and everything else. They lived here. They were here before the famous Anunnaki arrived here, the ones that we talk about the most that actually look more like humans. They were here before they even arrived. And their culture was out there again in Mesopotamia, and remnants of their civilization is still there out in those deserts. Okay. There's evidence of some type of war because some of the structures that they were living in turned to glass, which means we're talking about 3,000 degrees temperature, which means we're talking about vitrification. When you heat up sand to 3,000 plus degrees, it becomes vitrified, which means it turns to glass. The only way to make a heat that hot is through some type of a blast. And right now, the only way we can do it is with a nuclear blast. So there was some type of war back then that eradicated these people at that particular time. Let's see here. I see somebody quoting from the Emerald Tablets. Deep in Earth's heart lies the halls of Amenti, beneath the island of the sunken Atlantis, halls of the dead and halls of the living, bathed in the fire of the infinite all. That's from the that's from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Powerful stuff. Okay. Moon Goddess, selling debt, a great system. That's right, Moon Goddess. They really figured this thing out. Install a religious system, install a worship gene, get people to bring you all their food by bringing all your offerings to them so they can have supplies of food. You'll find when we go to these temples that they even had hidden chambers in the temples where the pyramid priest or the temple priest would go hide, and then they would talk through these little mouthpieces that would create an echo inside the temple, and the people would think they're talking to God. They were just talking to a priest that were hiding behind the walls, talking through these little channels that would magnify their voices. There was no God there. It was just people. Okay. They would take all that food and all those donations and put them in the storehouse, and they would have food and stuff for months. That's what they did. All right. The Conscious Conqueror says, where have the Anunnaki gone? Well, there's a twofold answer to that question. One is at the end of the last pyramid war that was started by Amun-Ra, also known as Marduk. And where can you find Marduk? You can find him right in here. Where else can you find Marduk? You can find him right in here. You can find him right in here. You can find him in the Torah. You can find him, which is upstairs. You can find him in the Jewish American Library. He's everywhere. Amun-Ra is when you say amen, You're giving thanks to him. He's the one that ordered it. He ordered that everyone give him thanks at the end of every prayer. And so when you say thank you, you're saying thanks to one of the most evil people of all time, who created two wars, and the wars over two things. One was because he didn't want people worshiping other gods. He said, I'm a jealous God, and there'll be no other God but me. That made it into the Bible, right? That's a famous biblical text, but that was said thousands of years prior by Marduk. And then the other reason he started a war was because he wanted to take over kingship of the world ahead of his processionary period. These Anunnaki pantheon, they ruled on based on precession of the equinoxes. And so he's the precession of Pisces, which we're still in Pisces right now. It's about to end. We're going into the age of Aquarius. And a lot of people don't know that fish that you see on the back of people's cars, they think there's for Jesus. It actually represents Pisces, and it represents Marduk, Amun Ra. They don't realize that. But anyway, he started a war because he wanted to take over early ahead of his processional period. And that war is one of the reasons why the sands of Egypt, the sand and the buildings in Mohenjo-daro and in the Indus Valley are all now turned to glass. It was a battle using some type of weapon. And I talk about this in my book, The Compendium of the Emerald Tablets. I've talked about it before in several lectures. They used the Brahma weapon, the Brahmahada weapon. These weapons were real weapons that they used that can heat the sand to 3,000 plus degrees, turning it to sand, turning buildings to sand, turning people to piles of dust. We have an account in the Bible of that happening, right? Where the woman turned around and turned into a pillar of salt. Is it really salt? It's really ash. And what it is, it's representing that weapon that came down on that city. That was a dropped weapon. Make no mistake about it. And it was planned to be dropped, and it was known ahead of time, the coordinates and even the time that it was going to drop. And these are talked about in these other texts, like the Mahabharata. They openly talk about these weapons. There's a weapon in here that can destroy a man on 3 worlds. They have weapons that can destroy planets in these texts. Do you think these people were sitting around 10,000 years ago? Let me write a fictional story about a weapon the size of a planet that can destroy planets. No, didn't happen like that. These people only wrote down things that were important. They didn't have time to rewrite and play. Just surviving on a daily basis was hard enough a lot of times. They wrote down important things. And so the Anunnaki, to answer the question, some left from the war. And the second part is some didn't leave. Some are still here. And their bloodlines most likely are still here. Like, for example, I believe that Yeshua is a demigod, part human, part Anunnaki. And the reason why is because when you read the Apocrypha text, you find out that his grandmother, Mary's mother, was also a virgin birth. How do you get a virgin birth right now in today's age? You get a virgin birth by in vitro fertilization. And I believe that either Enki or maybe even Enlil, one of those two, are the father. And I think it's in vitro fertilization. And I believe that even the Merovingian bloodline still exists today, which would be the bloodline of Jesus, because they found the book of Jesus's wife, which is at the seminary at Harvard in Boston. I had it in my hands in 2018. And so he never got crucified. That story is a fabrication of Rome. Never happened. If you read the Sinai Bible, which predates the King James Bible, Jesus never got crucified. Matter of fact, he most likely got married, had kids, and that bloodline is still on the planet today. The bloodline of Enlil, a bloodline of Enki. These people, they're still walking on the planet till this very day. When you trace back, when you go to the Sumerian kings list, and you analyze the names on that list, and you then fast forward in time to where you see it after the flood, where kingship was handed over to man, and they were mating with a human to create a demigod known as a pharaoh that would be the liaison between humans and the gods. And then the pharaoh is bloodline. Then the pharaohs would then, give birth, and that bloodline would maintain until the Egyptian dynasties were overthrown for the 7th time, and they started migrating across Arabia up into Europe, where along the way they're mating, having babies, and everything else. They turn from their original race into a more of a Caucasian race by the time they get to Europe, but they're still keeping all the traditions. This is why when you go to England, you go to the palace, right, where the queen is, you're going to see all Egyptian motif there. And their own words, they said, we have the right to rule over mankind. They believe it's because of their bloodline. It traces all the way back to the Sumerian kings. Faintly by now, obviously, but their concept and the idea is there that they're in some way related to these people, and so they believe that they have the right to rule over the planet in the way that they do. All right. So, and the answer is that they're gone, but through bloodlines, a lot of them are still here. Uh, let's see here. I just answered that one. Oops. Let's see here. There's two types of blood types: RH and RH negative and RH positive. Wonder what that means. Well, Grace, I have R negative, and so did my mom. It's kind of a rare blood type, and my mom almost died having my brother. She started hemorrhaging, and they couldn't get it because only 15% of the world have that blood type. So it's pretty interesting. There's still a lot of research being done on it. It's a rare blood type. There's a blood plasma bank here in my city that I go to every 3 months and donate my own blood in case something happens to me. I can get blood to for transfusion. If I'm out of the country or I'm gone somewhere, I'm in trouble. You know, uh, a lot of the scientists they say the RH is a rare blood type, and they don't. They call it alien blood, but I don't know if they're calling alien because of aliens, but they're just saying that it's not something in the normal blood pool. But it's pretty interesting. It does have some benefits, but it also has downfalls. Obviously, one of the benefits of this blood type, and you can't AIDS virus doesn't bind to the cell. So it's very difficult to get. They found that through studies that people with that blood type they just don't get AIDS, things like that. But like I said, it has its positives, but it also has its negatives as well. Um, so it definitely is interesting. It could be a throwback from these Anunnaki people. Let's see here. Let's see. How do you change religious genes in others? Great question, Ashley. The only way to do it is they have to do it themselves. And it takes them, first of all, realizing that the information that they were born into and bred into to believe is faltered. It's not accurate. And once they can come to the realization that the information that they've been believing in their entire lives is actually not 100% true, it's like when you're a drug addict or an alcoholic. The only way to overcome it is you have to admit that you have a problem. So until these people actually fully face the fact that what they've been born into is not actually real, or it has a lot of holes in it, let's say, and start doing research, then and only then will they begin to rewrite their DNA. So, DNA can be rewritten, it can be changed, it can be altered. We know this through simple experiments. If you speak positive affirmations out loud to where you can actually hear your voice 3 times a day for 21 days, your DNA will be rewritten because of that. We know this in science fact, not fiction. The same thing for these people when they come to the realization that they need to dig a little bit deeper, and then they start buying books and then on their own volition start doing the research and start doing their own studying. There's one thing that's accurate in this Bible. It says, study to show thyself approved. And I agree with that 1000%. Study to show thyself approved. When they begin to do the studying and all the research and they start to read and analyze all this text, right? And they go, oh man, this is not what I thought it was. And the realization hits them, there's a whole lot more that they can learn. And they need to understand that what they were taught is not 100% accurate. There's more. It's even more grander than what this story is. What this story is actually nothing. There's even a bigger story than this. And so instead of being intimidated by the fact that this book is not accurate and there's a lot of misinformation in it, be more excited that it's even more grand than what they even thought. And there's a lot more to learn. There's a lot more to understand. The universe is incredible. Our connection to the stars and other beings is incredible. There's a whole nother reality going on behind this reality. And there's a whole nother path to ascension that you didn't even know existed. And that's when they'll begin to rewrite their that worship gene and change it and go start to look within instead of looking outside. Oh yeah. Elvis says DNA slicing for decades. Oh yeah, that's for real, man. They've been slicing that DNA up for a long, long time. It's something that they'll never stop doing that. I'll tell you what, one thing they have figured out. They figured out how to make mice live 3 times their normal lifespan by stopping the shrinking of the telomeres. Now, what's interesting is if they can do it in mice, they can already do it in people. It's just a matter of can you afford to pay the fee? When it becomes more mainstream, this telomere, uh, right now it's just telomere research, but when it becomes an actual telomere therapy, where it's an actual therapy that can actually extend your lifespan to make you live 300 years old, when it gets to that point, if we as people on this planet don't take back control of this planet and our reality, what's going to happen is these elite people, they're going to monetize telomere treatments. They're going to monetize it by selling us time. I'm telling you, remember I told you this, if we don't take back control of this planet, who we are, uh, we need to change this whole economic system. We need to change this whole political system. If we don't take back control of this planet from the elites, what's going to happen is when this telomere research turns into actual telomere treatment and it's actually really working well, man, you don't want to be sold time because that's what it's going to come down to. I'm just telling you, that's what it's going to come down to. How do we take back our sovereignty? Green Eye says, what's your take on the book of Revelation? That's a great question. The book of Revelation is Revelations is a very interesting book. You know, it's this end time preaching that has allowed a lot of preachers to make a lot of money and has allowed them to build these mega churches and everything else and lure a lot of people in. And it's always the end times. But I'll tell you, there is no end time right now. We're not even close to an end time right now. And the reason why I say that is there has been far more darker periods and eras in time on this planet than we are in right now. As dark and as bad as it looks right now, there's been times that are far worse than this. We're actually living in a great time, to be honest with you. Now, does it mean that everybody's having a good old time around the planet? No. I'm talking about overall, as a percentage base. If you go back, we're talking about the Inquisitions. We're talking about the Black Plague, the bubonic plague, all these things that almost wiped out humanity. Just a lot of eras gone back. The American Holocaust, you probably don't even know about that one, right? 111 million indigenous natives murdered and slaughtered in the Americas over the course of, I think it was 70 years. 111 million, almost killed to extinction, these people. All right, so we're not even close to the end times. The end times would have happened all the way back then when 80 million were getting killed, when 111 million were getting killed, when the bubonic plague was wiping out the planet, when the Black Plague was wiping out the planet. So we're talking about a writing that is trying to lash out at the people of that era and also trying to convince people to join a cause, really, and that there will be this, and to give people this solace and peace that the trauma and the drama and the issues that they're going through right now will be rewarded greatly. But in true reality, it still was relying on external aid, external sources, external help, and external assistance, which just is not the case. It was written for a time in that era, but it has no application to us whatsoever right now. One thing that's interesting in that book, if you read the book of Revelation, you find out that it's talking about reincarnation and the fact that you come back as an actual person with a name, with a new name and everything else, and a new body. It doesn't say you're going to be this etherical being of light floating in dimensions. It doesn't say you're going to be in higher dimensions floating around and without a body. No, it says you're going to come back with a new body and a new name. It almost kind of really talks about having a breakaway civilization on another planet. You go taken to a new planet and you put inside this new this new city being built, right? This new Jerusalem and all this kind of stuff. So it's pretty interesting, far out stuff. But I don't think there's any end times coming anytime soon. I don't think we're even close to an end time, in my personal opinion. Even the Cold War was fake. People thought it was going to be the end times with the Cold War against America and Russia. Listen to me. Russia and America, no matter what you see on the news, are the best of friends. They're the best of buddies. Always have been and always will be. The Cold War was a money-making, multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, and they took it. And they pimped a lot of people around the planet and put a lot of fear on a lot of people and traumatized them for this war dollars, which funded a lot of private corporations, which they sat on the boards of, these poly tricksters, and they all made money and they retired as rich fat men. That's what the Cold War was about. While the whole Cold War was going on, America and Russia were having a good old time on science and science experiments and space experiments and all this other kind of stuff. America and Russia are the best of friends. Always have been, and always will be. The only people that don't know this are the working class people that were tricked into thinking that they're our enemy. The people on the higher levels, it's just a charade, okay? Just a big charade. I like this by Len Gaffney. Fear is a low vibration emotion. And so what the Anunnaki have done by creating this religious system, by making us worship them, by installing a worship gene and making us look externally for help and assistance, they have actually activated the fear. And by activating fear, what you see, one thing they use to get people to do things. Right now, if you turn on the news, it's fear, 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 fear. And then they make you do whatever they want. They say, you got to go do this, and you go do it because you're afraid. And so that's not a new thing. It's an ancient thing. And so they use fear, and fear is a frequency that can be used to manipulate you. And they knew this. So let's get them begging and praying to us and hoping and wishing to us so that we can become energy vampires and eat all their energy, drain them emotionally, drain them financially, drain them spiritually. Now we control them. We can mold them. We can manipulate them into doing whatever we want. That's why fear is dangerous. It's a choice, but most people don't know that, right? All right. Mook the Messiah, Blue Avians, can you explain anything, please? Blue Avians don't exist. It's fake. There's a book in here. I have a book. That whole Blue Avian story was made up from a book. The person, I'm not going to name any names because y'all know the name of that person. There's a book. I have it here in the house. So find that book. It's an old, little known book. Let me see if I can find the name of this book right quick while I got y'all on. That story was copied out of this book written by a woman and turned into a whole TV show and everything else. And nothing but a whole bunch of fake stuff. And they took the story and turned it into their story and made it into this whole big thing and tricked millions of people and had millions of people watching this stuff every single week until it finally got canceled when the people that were producing it realized it was fake news. The book is called Alien Contact and the Messages They Bring. Alien Contact, the Messages They Bring. It's a book that was put into print in February 14th, 2006 by Bonnie Meyer. And the story in this book is the Blue Avian story that a guy took and copied the whole story and turned it into his old alien abduction story and what he was doing with them and everything else. The whole thing was stolen from this book, Alien Contact, the Messages They Bring. February 14th, 2006. A little known book that hardly anybody knows. The book only has 10 ratings on Amazon. That's how little anybody knows of this book. But I got all the books. And I read everything. But that story was copied almost word for word out of that book. It's a fake story made up to make a whole bunch of money off of somebody else's book, really. Okay. And the last thing I'll say, fear, false evidence or fake evidence appearing real. That's right, Silver Fox. That's exactly what it is. The words of Thoth in the Emerald Tablets compared to the words of Jesus, or accurately known as Yeshua in the modern day Bible, right? So we're going to compare the words of Thoth from ancient times to the words of not only Jesus, but even a couple of his disciples as well. And we're going to see if there's a correlation between what's been said, what's been written in the biblical account versus what was etched and written by this man himself, Thoth the Atlantean priest king, because he actually authored his own tablet. He did not use a scribe for the emerald tablets with an S plural. He wrote that one himself. So his words from 36,000 years ago versus the biblical words, which were written between 100 AD to 900 AD, more modern times. As a matter of fact, when people try to tell me that I'm into this new age stuff, I go, no, actually, you're in the new age. I'm in the old age. Like the stuff that I research is like deep, deep antiquity, super ancient material. And most of the religions of the world cropped up and popped up only in the, from 1 AD on forward. So, of course, you have some of the ancient religions, which I don't even call them religions, like Taoism and Buddhism. They're not really per se religions. I'm talking about things that can literally turn you into a zealot, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, things like that. Those are New Age religions, Jehovah's Witness and all these things. They're all fairly new. They just popped up on the scene. They didn't exist in ancient times. They're all fairly new. Actually, a lot of them have very, very recent accounts, if you're talking about the Latter-day Saints and so forth, right? So we're going to take a look into Thoth's work in the Emerald Tablets, and we're going to see some of the correlations between ancient text and the modern Bible, and then you be the judge. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Okay, that's what we're going to take a look at. So I'll be doing some reading from my own book today, The Compendium of the Emerald Tablets. Still a bestseller. Still a bestseller on Amazon, and the book is also available on my website, Forbidden Knowledge with the number 4, forbiddenknowledge.com. Okay? Let's have a look here. All right. I'm in right now. Where am I at here in terms of I'm in the Emerald Tablet, tablet number 1. And Thoth said, "But in a time yet unborn, I will rise again, mighty and potent, requiring an accounting of those left behind me." Another interesting statement made by Thoth many thousands of years before Jesus tells his disciples that he will rise again, and that's in Mark 9:31. And Thoth said, "Then beware, O men of Chem." He's talking to the people of Egypt, but before it was Egypt, the real name is the land of Chem. "If ye have falsely betrayed my teaching, for I shall cast ye down from your high estate into the darkness of the caves where hence ye came. Betray not my secrets to the men of the north, to the men of the south, lest my curse fall upon you. Remember and heed my words, for surely I will return again and require of thee that which ye guard. Even from beyond time, and from beyond death I will return, rewarding or punishing as ye have requited your trust." In the biblical text of John 14:20, Jesus declares to his followers, "I go away and come again unto you. Tell no one the Son of Man has risen again." Thoth says, "For surely I will come again, betray not my secrets." You see, these things are very, very similar. So in one way, you have Thoth saying, "Listen, I'm teaching you guys some serious knowledge, some serious information, and I want you guys to not only understand it, digest it, and practice it, but also utilize it and live it." In other words, this is a lifestyle that he was teaching the people, not just some information for them to hear in one ear and out the other. He was trying to teach them a lifestyle, an ascension lifestyle. And what he's saying is, when I come back, because this guy literally leaves and comes back every so many hundreds, sometimes thousands of years. When I come back, if you guys fell off, I'm just going to cast you down. In other words, I'm going to destroy what you've built. I'm going to tear down your ideologies and rebuild you again from scratch. And then in the biblical account, you have Jesus virtually saying the same things. I'm coming again, and when I come back, there's going to be an accounting. There's going to be accounting for the stuff that I taught you. If you're living it, if you're living in that lifestyle, have you obtained that lifestyle of ascension, that ascension knowledge lifestyle? And if you haven't, well, you're going to have an accounting to pay. It's the same exact story. But the only thing is, the biblical account was written from 100 AD to 900 AD. So we know that the Emerald Tablets are super ancient. So what we're finding out here is that a lot of the stuff that comes in the New Testament is coming from, that is written in the New Testament, is coming from the Emerald Tablets, right? Let's take a look at it a little bit more. The Bible teaches us of a judgment day. Everyone, the still living and the resurrected dead, will face God's judgment. Even those who profess Christianity will find judgment through the deeds they have done in life, according to Matthew 7:21 through 23 and 2 Corinthians 5:10. Those who have lived righteous lives will be granted eternal life. Those who have lived evil lives will be condemned to eternal punishment. This record appears in several biblical passages, including Matthew 5:29 through 30, 25, 31, chapter 25, 31 through 46, and Mark 9:43 through 48. Again, these statements are very reminiscent of the same things stated by Thoth over 36,000 years ago. There's going to be an accounting. I'm going to hold you accountable for what you have learned and what you have done. Have you done good with the knowledge and you sustained that, or have you failed my trust? And if you have failed my trust, there's going to be an accounting. You see it replicated over and over again. It's the same exact information, the same exact statement. Did Jesus Christ, who is also referred to as Yeshua, teach reincarnation? Now, this is a big topic here that a lot of Christians don't want to even dig into. The fact that Jesus, his teaching was primarily about reincarnation, not about death and that's it and it's final, and then some kind of magical way you appear in the afterlife. Actually, that's not even what they teach. So, being a student of Christianity and the Bible and many other religions as well, this is the actual teaching that you're taught in that faith. So, if you're living the Christian lifestyle and you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, then all your sins are going to be forgiven, and you have a chance to be, raptured up into this heavenly paradise. Now, there's a little bit of a glitch with that. In some accounts, you don't get raptured until the second coming of Christ. And so the people that have been, they call them the saints that have died in Christ, they're still in this spiritual abyss, where they can't go up or down. They're kind of stuck in this halfway realm. And they've been there for now thousands of years, literally, and still waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for this magical second coming, of which they will be magically raptured up into heaven. So I don't know. When you analyze some of the stuff that's written, you can clearly see when a man's hand and a man's consciousness is guiding some of the information and altering it and changing it to their own preference. And the fact that there's evidence of this is William James Darby, who actually added the rapture to the Bible as a footnote, I believe in 1835, and which much later became part of doctrine as pastors realized that, hey, we can utilize this to gain more followers to the faith. Okay, we give them the fear factor, but if they really, really, really try hard and they really give their life to this thing, and of course, and all their money, then they have a chance to get raptured away and not face everlasting damnation. You see? It's all about control of people. Okay, that's what it's all about. It's all about the control of people. Thank you, Kunifa, for the donation. It's all about the control of people. So let's go back in again. So did Jesus teach reincarnation? Additionally, reincarnation appears in the Old Testament. Read the last words of the Old Testament in the book of Malachi. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord, and he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. Malachi 4, 5 through 6. Here is God speaking through Malachi. He was a famous prophet often quoted by great leaders throughout history, including U.S. presidents, Donald Trump, and actually saying that Elijah is going to come again. Now we find Jesus making the same statement in the book of Matthew. Jesus says, among them that are born of women, there hath not risen a greater than John the Baptist, notwithstanding that he is least in the kingdom of heaven and is greater than he. Matthew 11:11. What they're saying is that these people that die are coming back. It's pretty interesting. Then he says, and if he will receive it, this is Elias, which was for to come. Matthew 11 through 14, meaning his coming was prophesied. Therefore, Jesus said, he came, he was beheaded. They did with him what they would, and so they will do the same to me. They predict their comings and their deaths and their returns again, which is pretty interesting. And it's the same thing that Thoth says happens in the Emerald Tablets. Scriptures concerning the coming again of Elijah flow so prominently throughout the Bible that anyone can accept the fact that they appear within the context of an already established canon. If reincarnation is so important, why is it not taught in the West? Obviously, this guy dies and he comes back again. And it's talked about over and over and over again, the fact that now he's not coming back again in the spirit, he's coming back in the flesh. There's even more places, even in Revelations, that it talks about getting a new name and a new body and coming back again in a physical body. Not in a spiritual body. It's in the book of Revelation. In a physical body with a new name. You come back, you're born again. You get a brand new body and a brand new name. And Thoth said, great were my people in the ancient days, great beyond the conception of the little people now around me. Knowing the wisdom of old, seeking far within the heart of infinity, knowledge that belonged to the earth's youth. Wise were we with the wisdom of the children of light who dwelt among us. Strong were we with the power drawn from the eternal fire. In Matthew 3:11, John the Baptist says, I baptize you with water. He shall baptize you with fire. It's the same thing. And then Thoth said, and all of these, the greatest among the children of men was my father, thought me, keeper of the great temple, link between the child of light. Thought me is a Sumerian god, Enki. Also, John 12:36 records the words of Jesus, believe in the light that you may be the children of light. It's the same statement. It's the same exact statement, guys. It's the same exact statement. Thoth says, thought me, the keeper of the great temple, link between the children of the light. And then John says in 12:36, believe in the light that you may be the children of light. Same thing. This New Testament context is coming directly from the Emerald Tablets. And Thoth said, who dwelt within the temple of the races of men who inhabited the 10 islands, mouthpiece after the 3 of the dweller of Unal, speaking to the kings with the voice that must be obeyed. Grew I there from a child into manhood, being taught by my father the elder mysteries, until the time grew within the fire of wisdom, until it burst into a consuming flame. Thoth is literally talking about the fact that he's already gone into this mystery school. He's now part of this mystery school, these teachings by these ancient elders that are literally enlightening him and giving him the knowledge and the wisdom that he needs to last for millennia, and then teach to people that will then take a fractal of that knowledge and it will last for millennia. And what's interesting is when you look at the Gospel of the Holy 12, which is a little unknown scripture where it talks about Jesus going to Egypt and actually basically attending the Egyptian history schools. What do you think he was learning? He was learning this. The founder of the mystery schools, Thoth, he was learning directly from him. He was learning these same exact words and these same exact principles and ideologies in which he was regurgitating literally to the people of his era and of his time, because I do believe that he was a man that really walked, because I've been to the house that he lived in Egypt. Okay, it's a real place. He was really there. He actually lived there. It's a shrine now. You can go there. Whoever's going to Egypt with me in October, there's only 6 spots left for that trip. That trip sold out so fast. But whoever's going with me, we're going to the house where he actually lived when he disappeared out of the modern canonized Bible and was actually living in Egypt, learning the Egyptian mysteries before he went to Tibet to learn Reiki and all the other type stuff there, healing and energy healing and Qigong, and then going down into India and learning the mystic arts. That's what you read when you start. That's what you find out when you start reading a lot of these texts. The truth, a lot of information that's missing, right? Thoth has a rich tradition to prepare his life as the ultimate servant of all of Atlantis. His father, Thothme, is identifiable with Enki, as well as the dweller. So the dweller and Enki and Thothme are the same person, who taught him the elder mysteries, the secret mysteries. The knowledge he acquired at this level of wisdom is so overwhelming that it's like an all-consuming fire, much like many religions today speak of being consumed by the fire of God, or the unquenchable fire of the Holy Spirit. These ideologies and these archetypes are all going back to the original teachings of Thoth from the Emerald Tablets. And Thoth said, "Naught desired I but the attainment of wisdom, until on a great day the command came from the dweller of the temple that I be brought before him. Few there were among the children of men who had looked upon the mighty face and lived. For not as the sons of men are the children of light when they are the incarnate of a physical body. Chosen was I from the sons of men, taught by the dweller so that his purposes might be fulfilled." And you look at Matthew 24:30 states, "And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with the power and great glory." Thoth is about to come into his glory. Okay? You have to understand these sayings, Son of Man. What's the first thing that Thoth said when he descended on the land of Chem? In the beginning of the Emerald Tablets, he's sent by his father Enki to the land of Chem because the great flood had happened and the water was receding and the great temples were coming up out of the mud. Civilization had been completely destroyed. And his mission was to go there and help bring them back up to a higher level of civilization. That was his mission, according to the tablets. He descends in his ship. He opens the door. And what happens? They come to attack him with cudgels and spears, according to Thoth. And he holds up his staff and he sends out a ray of vibration, stopping them still a stone in the mountain. He actually freezes them with some kind of stun gun weapon, right? It doesn't kill them. It just stops them from attacking, which in my book, I talk about the fact that we have something called the active denial system in the military. It does the same exact thing. And he's there to teach them this wisdom and this knowledge and bring them back up to a higher level of civilization. And, he's there to fulfill his mission, which is to be the bringer of knowledge. And he does this. He does this again in the land of Chem. The land of Chem is where we get chemistry and alchemy. It all comes out of the land of Chem. That's where chemistry and alchemy originate from. And then from there, it spread around the world, right? After the Great Flood. And it's really interesting that we're talking about the Son of Man. Once Thoth freezes these people with this stunning ray, and then he releases them and he goes over to them and he shows them his magic science, in other words, his advanced technology. And they start to grovel at his feet because now they think he's really a god. And he tells them, no, don't do that. I'm not a god. He says, what did he say? I'm the son of Atlantis. He refers to himself as a son of Atlantis and always, and again, refers to himself as a son of man. Those are his two references. He never says I'm God. He never says I'm here to rule over you. I'm your creator. He doesn't say that. He says I'm a son of Atlantis, and then further down he says I'm a son of man. He says I'm the son of man. He never says I'm the son of God. He never says I'm your creator of all, or none of that kind of stuff. You see, and so we find very interesting similarities between when Jesus is talking, and he's always referring to himself as the Son of Man. Pretty interesting. And Thoth said, purposes yet unborn in the womb of time, long ages I dwelt in the temple, learning ever yet and more wisdom until I do approach the light emitted from the great fire. Taught me he the path to Amenti, the underworld where the great king sits upon his throne of might. Deep I bowed in homage before the lords of life and the lords of death, receiving my gift, the key of life. That's the Ankh. Free was I of the halls of Amenti, bound not by death of the circle of life. He had conquered death. Thoth is talking about the fact that he had literally been given the key of life, which is the Ankh, but not just any old Ankh. He was given a Jed pillar Ankh, and he's able to walk through the gates, the star gates. Also, what's interesting here, and there's depictions of this in Egypt, which when you go with me in October, you will see these with your own eyes. It's pretty interesting. Some of the first original baptisms and things like that are all in the Egyptian hieroglyphs. And what's interesting, though, is the fact that he's talking about being free from death. He had now conquered death. He now has the capability to transfer his consciousness into new avatar bodies, in which, further in the tablets, he talks about the fact that he's got these halls of Amenti, where he has these rejuvenation chambers, and he would have his bodies in these chambers, and he would transfer from body to body, walk amongst man, but unlike a man, he says. In other words, he's not stealing people's bodies. He's walking amongst men, but unlike a man. In other words, he's in a sleeve. He understands the concept of being in that sleeve. Whereas we're in a sleeve, and we think the sleeve is us. This is just the mode of transportation through a third dimension. It's not really us at all. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find another good correlation here. Just pretty interesting stuff I was just going over. And I was like, people need to see this. And Thoth said, he who encouraged would dare the dark realms, let him be purified first and long fasting. Lie in the sarcophagus of stone in my chamber. He's talking about the sarcophagus, or really the stone box, is inside the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. It's not for death. It's not for a dead pharaoh. There's another purpose to that. Let him be purified by long fasting. Lie in the sarcophagus of stone in my chamber. Then reveal I to him the great mysteries. So if you lay in that stone box inside of the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid, and you take a mallet and you hit that granite coffer on the outside with the mallet, you get this amazing 2-to-1 resonance throughout the entire chamber, which creates all of these almost psychedelic experiences, and you gain knowledge. So he says, then I revealed to him the great mysteries. Soon shall he follow to where I shall meet him, because you actually have an out-of-body experience. Even in the darkness of earth shall I meet him. I, Thoth, Lord of wisdom, meet him and hold him and dwell with him always. Jesus answered him, saying, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. It's the same exact scenario, same exact sentiment, just said slightly in a different way. Pretty interesting. There's so many of these in here that I can go on and on and on. And what we have to understand is that a lot of the verses where Jesus, really Yeshua, is speaking in the Bible is really fragments and fractals of what he learned in the Egyptian mystery schools that was taught by Thoth, the Atlantean priest king, and what he wrote in his emerald tablets. He was almost quoting this stuff, putting his own slight spin or turn on it, or generalizing it, but this is where he got the information from. This is why this book has done so well, because people, I mean, you can go on from page after page after page with this kind of information, and you'll find that there's a lot of correlations between this and the Bible. And you have to, again, ask yourself, which came first, the chicken or the egg? That's what you have to ask yourself. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? And it's pretty deep because he goes into cymatic frequencies. He goes into all these things. He goes into the mystery of 369 by Nikola Tesla, before Nikola Tesla was born, right? Nikola Tesla most likely learned it from the Emerald Tablets as well himself. So it's just really interesting to me that we have, these correlations. And then again, when you as a person that's religious or that's believing in that faith, they just don't want to research these things. They don't want to look into it. If you tell them that, if you show them this, they're going to tell you that you're worshiping something, Satan, even though you're not worshiping this. This is something that, it's something that brings you knowledge. You go, oh, I got this because this guy did so much amazing work in the ancient past. I want to learn about his wisdom and his knowledge. And if you start looking at things like this and researching things like this, then you're a demon. You're a demon. I've been called demons and all kind of stuff, right? Just the other day, I think it was 2 days ago, some crazy lady started commenting on all my posts and all my videos, all this crazy stuff about you're a demon, you're worshiping Satan and blah, 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 blah. So what happens in religion, these people turn into zealots. If people who are into, Christianity, for example, ever did the full research on Yeshua and got all the apocryphal texts and found out where he was, what he did, what he studied, and what he was really teaching, I think it'd be a huge eye-opener, which is why I do these videos. People need to understand that there's a lot more to the story than what they've been told. Just like, for example, Isis, Osiris, and Horus are the original Trinity, right? That's the original Trinity. And Isis had a baby, basically gave birth to Horus without having sex. So she gave birth to Horus. She had you want to call it a in vitro fertilization, whatever you want to call it, but that's the original setting for the story. And then from there, after getting passed down from generation to generation, it turns into, Jesus, Mary, Mary being the virgin birth, giving birth to Jesus as a virgin birth, and then having a Holy Trinity, which is based on, the Holy Ghost and all these things. But it's not that. That's a copy from ancient Egypt. It originated from ancient Egypt. But the problem that we have is people don't like to do the research. They don't like to study. That's why I made a book like this where you can go read verse by verse and you can break down tablet verses versus biblical verses, and you can kind of see where a lot of the information really truly originated from. And we have to come to a point where if you're so confident in your religion, well, then challenge it. Not challenge your creator, because that's kind of ignorant, but I'm saying challenge the information you've been taught. Say, hey, if there was only Adam and Eve, then how did Cain find a wife when he got kicked out of the garden? Questions like that. Obviously, there were people on the planet. Why would God tell him that when you go out there, you're going to find a wife and I'll put a mark on your head so that people don't kill you? What people? Questions like that. When you dig into a lot of the ancient texts, especially the Sumerian texts, because it originates in Mesopotamia, and you're researching the Tigris River and Euphrates River, and you're researching that entire region, and you're looking at the Red Sea and all of this. And then I start to make some correlations between some Sumerian stories and what happened with Moses, and I'm like, this is pretty interesting. So what I did was I took the the text and I back converted it down several different languages to get more to the source language. And you find that the biblical version is actually a mistranslation. Moses never crossed the Red Sea. And they're still teaching this in Bibles and Bible study and in churches today. Moses never crossed the Red Sea. He crossed the Sea of Reeds. Now, it's nearby the Red Sea. It's a much smaller sea and actually a little bit easier to cross. I'm not taking anything away from the story in terms of that, but I'm saying things like that are very, very crucial. Now, what's interesting about the Sea of Reeds, I did the research on the geology, because you can do the research on the geology of the planet going back thousands of years. If you do a geological rewind in that region, based on tectonic plate movement, there would have been a massive quake, which would have caused a massive tsunami around that same exact time, which would have what? Sucked all the water out of the sea. Have you ever seen a tsunami? Before it comes ashore, it sucks the water away from the shore, clears it out. Just a few years ago, there was an image of one where an entire beach was dried out for hours before the water came crashing back. So you have a similar account where Moses, and I don't think it was even Moses, the person who actually took the people, and those people weren't slaves of Pharaoh. There was never a slave of any pharaohs. When you go to Egypt, you're going to learn this firsthand. There were no slaves. Slaves never existed in Egypt for building pyramids and all this kind of hard work and labor. These people, there were slaves that existed, don't get me wrong, but these people that were claimed to be building all these pyramids and doing the work for the pharaoh like that on that level, that didn't exist. When you go to Egypt, and you'll find that they have all the medical records of the workers. These workers had insurance. They had a rudimentary form of insurance. They had paychecks, and all their paycheck records are still there and were left behind. Left behind, paycheck records. People were getting paid to work out there on those temples and those pyramids. There were no slaves. What happened was the story of Moses has been completely skewed and turned. So the true Moses is Akhenaten, Pharaoh Akhenaten. Pharaoh Akhenaten, who was worshiping Amun-Ra, who was one of the rulers and still right now really is ruling this entire planet. Amun-Ra is still ruling until Pisces fully ends. Okay, and Aquarius begins. That's in 2025. So Amun-Ra took over, also known in the Bible as Marduk, and also known in the Sumerian tablets as Marduk as well. In Egypt, known as Marduk Amun-Ra. He took over kingship in the age of Pisces, which are those little fish that you see Christians running around with on the back of their cars. They think it's representing the multitude of fish by Jesus, but it's not. The Pisces symbol represents the kingship handed down to Amun-Ra. If you go back in ancient times, that's the original meaning of it. So they're riding around with one of the most evil, brutal rulers' symbols on the back of their cars and their vans and their minivans and everything else. They don't even realize it. But anyway, so Amun-Ra is the guy who he's also known as Aten, the sun disk, because he mostly rules from his disk in the sky. That's why they call him Aten, the disk. And he would communicate with Akhenaten as a pharaoh. He would communicate directly to him. He had Akhenaten try to usher in monotheism, a one God religion. Because at that time, there were so many gods, the pantheon of gods existed. And what Aten was, he said he was a very jealous God. This is Amun-Ra. There'll be no other God but me, which also made it into the Bible. He does the good and the evil. That's in the Bible as well. And so he started telling Pharaoh Akhenaten, I want you to start erasing everything about these other gods, deface all the other gods. Those are his relatives, actually. So Akhenaten started having his military go around and start chiseling away all the faces of all the other gods, Thoth, Isis, Horus, Osiris, Ramses, anybody, whoever was out there that was considered to be, holy and God and to be worshipped and to be thought of as a living God, he wanted them all defaced. one God system that Aten was trying to usher in, and he started ordering this to be done. Break the faces off the statues, break the noses off, break the ears off. All this stuff was done a long time ago, guys, a very, very long time ago. And proof of this, they just found another ancient statue that they dug up that had been buried for thousands of years. And guess what? The face was chiseled off, and so was the nose and the ears and everything else. This is how old, this is how far back this goes. So Akhenaten was got in trouble for this. Eventually, the people turned on him. The military turned on him. The other politicians turned on him. And it's like, look, dude, you got to get the hell out of here. You destroying everything. You destroying erasing our history. You going around erasing everything. And so he had been building his following base. He had become an influencer, all right, a religious influencer for people who wanted to believe in monotheism. And he acquired a huge following in that regard. And that following of him and these followers who want to go with this one God system, worshiping Amen, were kicked out of the kingdom. Okay, they were forced out. Now, what did Akhenaten do? Well, he went to the Great Pyramid and he had the Ark of the Covenant removed. What do you mean? Well, let me tell you. That box that Thoth talks about laying in that will send you out into other dimensions through consciousness is the same exact dimensions as the Ark of the Covenant. As a matter of fact, because the Great Pyramid had lost its ability to generate power efficiently because the Nile had kind of wiggled itself away from the pyramid complex over time, it was broken because they needed that aquifer underneath the pyramid to create physiostatic electricity. So what happens is that box was put there, that stone coffer, the Ark of the Covenant was put inside of it to add an extra power boost because we know that it generated power because scientists at a university in America recreated it based just on the biblical information, and it created so much of a power spark they had to shut it down. The arc coming out of it, the arc of electricity coming out of it was incredible. So this thing was a power source, this ark, and they put it in there to complete the broken part of the Great Pyramid that had stopped, allowing it to generate power. And why is this important? Because when Akhenaten was forced out of Egypt, him and his followers, they went to the Great Pyramid and they took the ark, the source of Egypt's power, literally, and they fled with that. And when they fled with it, that's when the Pharaoh sent the army after him. And that's when Akhenaten and his people crossed over the Sea of Reeds, not the Red Sea, and crossed into safety as the water from that tsunami came crushing back, killing the majority of the chariots. And that's most likely really what happened. Pretty interesting stuff, guys. Pretty interesting stuff. So there's so much crisscross that has happened over time, and so much human input that has gone into changing stories around to get to the story that's there now. Even including, the 10 Commandments, which literally come from the 42 laws of Ma'at. That's where the 10 Commandments come from, just little things like that. And so Moses, in my opinion, really was Pharaoh Akhenaten. And then after they got rid of Akhenaten, his son took over. They forced him into kingship and to pledge allegiance to them. And then they killed him. All right, so they killed King Tut. Because you had Pharaoh Akhenaten and you had King Tut. They killed King Tut, and then they got that back their full control because they didn't want King Tut to try to seek vengeance for his father's, situation. So they said, you know what, you guys kicked my dad out of here, but I'm gonna get you back. So they decided to kill King Tut. So they got rid of him, and then they went back into their system again that they had going on. But meanwhile, that monotheistic system, that mindset had caught on. And people started building churches. So the temples of Isis, which were all around the ancient land of Kim in those days in Egypt, they started converting those into churches. This is long before Jesus even existed. They started turning them into Coptic Christian churches. So Christianity has literally nothing to do with Jesus, although Christians will tell you that it's all about Jesus. It started and formed long before Jesus ever even was a thought. Okay. And it came, Judaism and Christianity is all virtually the same thing. The only thing that's slightly different, obviously, is Islam. And they believe that Gabriel, or Jibril, but also the real name is Gabriel if you want to speak it in English, came and brought this information to Muhammad, who couldn't read or write himself, but he had to hire somebody to come in, maybe as a volunteer, and be the person to write down all these words. And so Gabriel would recite this information to Muhammad, and Muhammad would recite it to this other guy who would write it all down. And that's how you come up with that whole faith. And then, of course, Muhammad goes to the location where the Dome of the Rock is today on an appointed time, and he's taken up into space by these angels. Alien abductions, what it was. He got abducted by aliens. They took him away, took him into space, and brought him back. But the spot and the location where he was taken away from at the Dome of the Rock, the reason why they built that temple there is because the spot where he was standing, there's an indention in the stone, a giant circular indention exactly where he was standing, where witnesses saw him getting beamed up into space. Pretty interesting stuff. If you look at this stuff from the perspective of magic and mysticism and people with magic wands that have power, to do this kind of stuff, well, then, of course, all this stuff is going to make sense to you the way you were taught. But if you look at it as a logical human being that does research on language, linguistics, that does research on science and physics, that does research on, basic understanding of civilizations, kind of like a basic bare bones understanding of anthropology. If you can tap into those things, those 3 or 4 things, you start to see the whole story a lot differently. When you start getting and picking up a lot of these, like the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and you start reading that, and you start saying, man, this sounds like a lot of stuff from the Bible, but this thing is ancient. It's older than the Bible. You start to realize a lot of stuff. And what's interesting, I think the people that come with me to Egypt in October are going to have a phenomenal time. It's really going to be incredible because you're going to see some things and get confirmation on things that you were thinking, were real or you thought about before in terms of a concept or idea. It's going to be confirmed when you get there. And you're going to be like, wow, this is real. This is real. This is how it happened. When you're standing next to obelisk that is, 200 yards and weighs, 2,000-3,000 tons, and you hear somebody on the side of us saying, oh yeah, they put this on a boat and brought it over here, you're going to laugh. You're going to realize there's no way they put this thing on a boat. This thing was moved here by some other method. So it's just going to be an amazing, eye-opening event. There are 6 tickets or 6 seats left for the trip. Thank you for watching this video. Please click the like button. Please click the bell so you can get notifications. And also, please share this video. And I'll be back on again next week. All right. Peace.